modern airliners are among the most complex and reliable machines in common use. But occasionally, delays in fixing a known defect have led to disaster. This is the story of one of the most terrifying and avoidable accidents in recent history. When a 747 suffered a devastating explosion at high altitude, the crew and passengers faced an unprecedented crisis. It is also a story of how one family's grief led to a relentless investigation to uncover the full, disturbing truth.
Lee can't have died for nothing. You know, you've got to find out why he died, and you've just got to make sure that it never happens again.
And it reveals how other known problems in aircraft design have continued to go uncorrected, causing further avoidable accidents.
So would I be surprised if it happened again? I would be surprised if it didn't happen again. It is a matter of time.
One of the most shocking cases of a known design flaw being ignored for years would finally take its toll on a United Airlines 747 bound from Honolulu to Auckland, New Zealand. As Flight 811 prepared for takeoff, the crew were concerned with another kind of threat that had recently led to tragedy.
We were in the aftermath of Lockerbie, and I had instructed the crew to be particularly aware because it was a through flight from Los Angeles going through to New Zealand. So in my pre-flight briefing, I had asked them to make sure that they checked any baggage that looked suspicious or anything because we wanted to be extra cautious.
Flight 811 was heavily loaded, 337 passengers, packed cargo holds, and a full fuel load. The doors closed on time, and the plane left the gate just before 2 o'clock in the morning for a routine 8-hour flight.
Well, we were going to New Zealand on vacation, someplace that we had really thought was interesting, and somebody had told us how beautiful it was, so this was kind of a dream come true.
I was seated in what's called the upper deck. I hadn't had a vacation in 5 years, and I took all my Mileage Plus points from United Airlines, and I purchased a business class ticket to Auckland, New Zealand, and Sydney, Australia. I was going to finally make that dream vacation I'd always wanted, to get to Australia and lay on a beach somewhere and forget about airplanes, forget about accidents, and get this out of my mind for a while.
On the flight deck, Captain Dave Cronin was hugely experienced, just 2 months short of retirement.
Rotate. I flew almost 35 years with United. I've got over 30,000 hours of flight time and just about everything, military as well as civilian. My co-pilot, or first officer, was Al Slater. And I've known Al at that time for probably 20 years. And the second officer, Mark Thomas, was the first time I had flown with him. But we got along real well.
Tell them we can handle 33 if it's available. Okay.
The pilots wanted to climb to 33,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean to avoid turbulence from bad weather.
We did notice that there were thunderstorms 100 miles south, right on course, which was rather unusual for that time of night. So I left the seatbelt sign on.
Captain Cronin's decision to keep people fastened in their seats would save the lives of many.
We were still climbing out, and the seatbelt sign was still on, and just basically getting ready to serve beverages and then to tuck everyone in for the evening because it was going to be a long flight down to New Zealand.
Okay, tell them we're going to detour over to the left.
Center, United 811 Heavy, we're going to be detouring. Some weather here, it'll be to the left, of course.
100 miles from Honolulu, As Flight 811 climbed through 23,000 feet, a critical malfunction was about to occur. There was now a huge air pressure difference between the inside and outside of the aircraft. Suddenly, passengers sitting just above and behind the cargo door heard a noise.
Then there was kind of a grinding noise.
I heard like a thud.
The hell?
In the next nanosecond, it was pure, unadulterated pandemonium.
We lost number 3. Going down.
It looks like we've lost number 3 engine and we're descending rapidly. Coming back.
The next thing I knew, I found myself on the stairwell, hanging onto the rungs, and I immediately knew it was an explosive decompression.
The cargo door had torn off and ripped a huge section of the plane with it. The pressurized air inside blasted out with explosive force.
I immediately thought of Lockerbie. We actually thought it was a bomb that went off.
It was hell on earth. Everything on the airplane that wasn't fastened down, tied down, or secured became airborne. The noise was incredible.
Everything in front of us was gone. Where we were sitting, we were about 6 inches from the hole, so there was nothing in front of us or to the side of us. The whole side of the plane was gone. Actually, our feet were dangling on the hole, and I first thought we weren't going to make it. You know, I just didn't think there was any hope.
With the pressurized air blown out, the lack of oxygen at 23,000 feet was now suffocating the passengers and crew.
It felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach, knocked the wind out of me. And I remember trying to catch my breath and couldn't. You were supposed to grab those oxygen masks and put them on, except the oxygen masks in that cabin, they were ripped out of the ceiling and they weren't there. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what it feels like to suffocate.
United 811 Heavy, we're doing an emergency descent.
The pilots could tell from their instruments that the number 3 engine was failing, but they couldn't tell the full extent of the damage. Their priority was to get the plane down to a level where they could breathe normally.
Put your mask on, Dave.
But the pilots didn't know that the explosion had destroyed the entire oxygen supply.
Can't get any oxygen.
We're not getting any oxygen. You getting any?
I can't get any either.
With the plane heading steeply down and no word from the cockpit, the cabin crew feared the worst.
I remember thinking that the cockpit, which is up in the upper deck, had probably blown off the airplane too, because as far up as we could see, there was nothing there.
Now we're doing this nosedive. My next thought was, oh my God, we're just going straight down. We're going to crash into the sea.
With its airframe ruptured, severe damage to the right wing and engines, and the crew forcing it down in an emergency descent, the problems on Flight 811 had only just begun. Two minutes after suffering a devastating explosive decompression, Flight 811 was still in a steep emergency descent, passing rapidly through 15,000 feet to reach breathable air.
United 811 Heavy, say your altitude now.
Leaving 15.
United 811 Heavy, we're out of 15.5.
United 11, roger.
I think we blew a door or something.
Tell a flight attendant to get prepared for an evacuation.
The crew finally began to level out at a safer altitude, but they now faced a barrage of problems. The most immediate was the disintegration of the number 3 engine, nearest to the explosion.
We don't have any fire indications? I don't have anything. Okay, we lost number 3. Let's shut it down. There's no M1.
Yeah, okay. Ready for number 3 shutdown checklist.
Number 3. Before you shut down number 3, the generator went off. Looks all right to try it now.
Well, let's stop the vibration anyway.
Fuel jettison procedure. Main boost pumps. On.
Center, United 811. We need the equipment standing by. Company notified, please.
We got a control problem.
Roger.
Center wing. Left, right. Valves. On.
Start dumping the fuel.
I am dumping.
One stewardess had been seriously injured by falling debris. As Laura Brentlinger helped her, the full gravity of their situation suddenly became clear.
As I'm holding her in my arms, I looked up, and as I looked up, that was the first time I saw this tremendous hole on the side of the aircraft that was just a void, and seats were missing, and I immediately knew that we had lost passengers.
5 rows of seats had been blown out in the decompression, killing 9 passengers. On the flight deck, the crew had turned the stricken plane back to Honolulu, but with 80 miles still to go, the crisis now got far worse.
We got a hell of a control problem here. I got almost full rudder on this thing.
Are you dumping as fast as you can?
I'm dumping everything.
We got a problem with number 4 engine?
Yeah.
Debris from the explosion had also damaged the number 4 engine. If it failed completely, the implications were severe.
If you're on 2 engines and you weigh 700,000 pounds, that is a big deal. Simply because with that kind of weight, 2 engines are not going to keep you in the air. You're going to come down.
Can you maintain 240?
Yeah, just barely.
We're losing altitude.
Know it.
Center, United 811 Heavy. Do you have a fix on us?
Affirmative, sir. I have you on radar.
Okay, we've lost engine number 3, and we don't have full power on engine number 4. We can't hold altitude right now. We're dumping fuel, so...
United 811 Heavy, roger. I show you 60 miles south of Honolulu at this time.
Roger.
I haven't talked to anybody yet. I can't get to him. You want me to go downstairs and take a look?
Yeah, let's see what's happening down there.
I think we lost a compressor, but...
Can't hold altitude.
Yeah, I told him that we're
Put
gonna...
some max on there. I got takeoff power on this thing.
Whatever you need, Captain.
Although the number 4 engine was failing, the pilots pushed it, along with the remaining engines, to full power, a setting they should not be run at for more than 4 minutes. But the nearest land was 15 minutes away.
I look out the window on the right-hand side, and I see flames, big flames. And I know what flames in an engine means. It's not good.
The pilots were unaware that the number 4 engine was now on fire.
You got 250 knots now, that's good. 7,000...
Yeah, we're getting more rumble.
Watch your heading, watch your heading. You want to go direct Honolulu.
Okay, I'm going to go downstairs and see what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead and run down and see what's happening.
I saw the flight engineer descend down the stairwell. And when I saw him, my relief was, oh my God, they're alive. And there was a huge sense of relief for me. He saw the hole, turned as white as a sheet, and I screamed to him, dear God, please get us down.
We've got a fire out there.
Oh yeah, we got a fire in number 4. Go through the procedure. Shut down the engine.
We're not going to be able to hold this altitude on 2.
We got a fire on the right side. We're on 2 engines now.
The whole right side, it's just gone from about the one right back to it's just open. You're just looking outside.
What do you mean?
It looks like a bomb.
Fuselage?
Yeah, the fuselage, it's just open.
Okay, it looks like we got a bomb that went off on the right side. The whole right side is gone.
Yeah, from about the one right back to,
Anybody?
some people are probably gone. I don't know.
I knew that we had lost people. I didn't know how many. In fact, I didn't know until the next day how many were lost. But, you know, it's a terrible thing when you're a captain of an airplane and you lose passengers.
Lee Campbell, flying home to New Zealand, was sitting in row 10, just in front of the cargo door.
I woke up with such a start because I'd seen Lee standing by the bed, just with a grey jacket over his arm and a small smile on his face. And of course, as I woke up, it faded, wasn't there. And then we woke up in the morning, we discussed this. I said, oh, that was strange in the night, but it was such a vivid dream. Lee was standing there. And then the radio came on, and the first item of news is that there'd been a problem with the United aircraft. And I said, that was Lee, that's Lee's. And my blood just ran cold. I knew he was dead from that moment.
Center, do you read? We evidently had a bomb or something. A big section of the right side of the airplane is missing.
United 11 Heavy, roger.
I wouldn't go any faster than I had to because that hole, I mean, I wouldn't get it over 250 knots because that's a big...
Okay, what's our stall speed?
I wouldn't go below 240.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna make this.
We didn't know that we were going to make it back. So we were actually preparing to ditch that airplane at night in the Pacific Ocean, which has never been done before.
In the cabin, the crew prepared for the worst.
My training kicked in and got up from my jump seat and started instructing the crew. We have to prepare the cabin. We have to, prepare for a ditching, which I thought was inevitable.
You're running around getting life vests on, and I do remember thinking, I'm not sure this is going to matter, because when we hit the water, I just imagine the plane's going to split apart.
I knew that if we hit the water, it'd be tantamount to hitting the ground, and there would be very few, if any, survivors. So my mind went to the things that meant something to me, and at that point in my life, it was my son.
Believing they were going to die, one passenger took these photographs in the hope they'd be found in the wreckage and give clues to the cause of the crash. For 15 minutes, the plane steadily lost altitude. Then, at 4,000 feet, the first glimmer of hope.
After an imponderable time, I remember one of the passengers began to point out one of the windows on the right side. And everybody looked. And we looked through this little window from wherever we were, and we could see a point of light, and another point of light, and another point. And pretty soon, you could make out a coastline.
Okay, I got lights over here.
Okay.
Okay, we're at 4. We're 21 miles out. We're in good shape.
At Honolulu Airport, an emergency was declared. All other aircraft were diverted, and the rescue services prepared for the crash landing of a fully loaded airliner.
Hey, you want to give me some speeds?
Yeah, 150 is going to be your 2-engine. Use a 160.
I need souls on board if you have it.
Okay, souls on board.
160 is the minimum.
Stand by, United 811 Heavy.
I don't know how many's on board. 200 and... I don't have the paperwork in front of me here.
We're too busy right now. 200 and something.
Okay.
6 minutes from the airport, the crew now had to slow the overweight plane for landing. But the effect of this was unknown.
What's going to happen when I start coming out with flaps and landing gear? We're either going to land on the airport, in the water, or downtown Honolulu.
Okay, we'll try 10. Okay, inboards are coming to 10. How do the controls feel?
All right so far.
But the flaps were damaged and could not fully extend. This meant that Flight 811 would have to land dangerously fast.
United 811 Heavy, do you have the airport in sight?
It's over here to the right, Captain.
Okay.
Okay, we have the airport. United 811 Heavy.
811 is clear to land 8 left. Equipment standing by. Wind 05012.
Clear to land. 8 left, United 811 Heavy.
As the unstable 747 lined up for landing, the pilots knew they would only have one attempt. But even if they got it on the runway, the nagging question remained. Would the stress of impact cause the damaged and overweight aircraft to disintegrate? Severely damaged, with an unstable airframe and losing altitude on just 2 engines, Flight 811 now began its final approach to Honolulu Airport.
2-engine approach.
2-engine approach.
We still had no idea how far off the ground we were, if we were going to make it to Honolulu or not. But that seemed like an appropriate time. If we were somewhere around land, that we're probably going to try and land somewhere to get the passengers in their brace positions. So that's when we started yelling for them to get down in their brace positions.
Every molecule in my body combined to express, get this damn airplane on the ground.
Well, how are we doing on the hydraulics?
Hydraulics are good.
You got brakes?
Normal hydraulics.
So we got brakes, but you're only going to have reversing on 1 and 2.
Though I thought maybe there was a chance that we were going to actually be able to attempt to land, the thought came to my mind, what happens now? Do we, on impact, do we explode? Do we fall out this huge hole?
Despite dumping fuel, the aircraft was still critically overweight. But without full flaps to keep it in the air, it had to approach fast.
1,000 down.
The danger was that the undercarriage could shear off and the plane break up.
1.5 high. 190. 185. A little slow, Dave. It's below what we want. Coming up on the glide slope.
Okay. Well, let's try the gear.
No one knew if the explosion had damaged the landing gear.
I remember Laura saying to me that she didn't hear the landing gear go down. And it was loud, you know, it was still loud, and I didn't hear the landing gear go down. So that's another thought. Maybe they can't get the landing gear down. Maybe it's not down.
Got gear down, we're clear to land, and everything's taken care of as far as we know. $200. 195. Half a dot high. Looking good. 192. 195.
Coming off on the power.
100 feet. 50 feet.
Center the trim. Center the trim.
30. 10. 0.
We're on.
Gear's holding.
We landed. It felt fast. And that was my next concern, is that we weren't going to stop at the end of the runway, that we were just going to keep going.
And all of a sudden, we were slowing down, and I said, "Oh my God, we've landed. We're on ground." And the people started applauding.
Probably the best landing I've ever made. When we finally stopped on the runway, We deployed all 10 chutes, and the flight attendants evacuated all the passengers.
It's amazing how fast everyone went. My understanding is like less than 45 seconds, 330 people were off the airplane.
We were probably 20 feet off the ground, and I would have stepped out of the airplane without a slide. I wanted to get off so bad. Fortunately, there was a slide. I stepped into the abyss, fell into the slide, whooshed down to the bottom of the thing, and then you hit feet running.
The slide kind of kicked me up and flew me up into the air, and my thought was, oh my God, I'm going to survive this whole thing, and I'm going to get wiped out here on the evacuation, because it just really threw me. And I landed and scraped up my legs pretty badly and landed on my feet, and it wasn't until that moment that I had the sense of, I'm here, I'm okay, I'm on the ground.
When we got all our switches off, I ran through the airplane, made sure there was no one else on the airplane, came up to the door 1 left, and went down the slide, and I came around the front and I saw that humongous hole in the side, and I just couldn't believe it. By the grace of God, we made it, and it was an awesome experience. I would never want to go through that again.
It was crazy, it was wild, it was scary, all at the same time. I just thought that was the end, that we were going to die. I mean, that was my first thought, that this is the end.
But for the families of the 9 people who were killed, the ordeal was only beginning. Kevin and Susan Campbell's son Lee had been flying home.
About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think they said that there was no New Zealanders involved, but we just knew that it was Lee. And then about, I suppose, a quarter of an hour later, we got a phone call from Chicago, and they just said that they regret to inform us that our son was missing, presumed dead. And I guess about another hour after that, a policeman arrived at the door, and he took one look at us and he says, I can see that you've had the news. So it was just an awful, awful day. And it certainly didn't get much better for a long, long time.
Although Lee's body had not been recovered, the Campbells flew straight to the wrecked aircraft in Honolulu.
Your initial feeling is that you want to be as close to the spot where your relative died, and that was the aircraft. So we had to immediately go in and see the aircraft.
The damage inside was horrific, just a total mess. And the hole in the side of the aircraft was much bigger than I had thought it would be, even though we had seen television newsreel reports. And it was so sad to get in and actually see where Lee's seat had been. The legs of the seat were still there. There was a good bit of fuselage beside him, and still a window.
But the Campbells' desire to find the cause of Lee's death inevitably brought them face to face with dreadful details.
They took us to the medical examiner's office as well, because they had found body parts and that sort of thing. So they didn't actually show us the body parts, but they showed us bits and pieces that they had recovered from the engines, and we got the medical examiner's report on what they had recovered. So, we really would have preferred that it was Lee that went through the engine, because it would have been an immediate death, whereas it was a 4-minute fall down to the ocean, and we know that the people could have been alive as they were falling. And when you think about that, that's just horrific.
As it became clear that their son's body would never be found, the Campbells' need to find the cause of the accident that killed him grew stronger.
Lee can't have died for nothing. You know, you've got to find out why he died, and you've just got to make sure that it never happens again.
The Campbells embarked on a relentless personal investigation that would last nearly 2 years. The loss of their son meant they would stop at nothing to uncover the truth.
The engines number 3 and 4.
2 months after the accident on Flight 811, when the National Transportation Safety Board held preliminary hearings, the Campbells made sure they were there. But they soon grew frustrated. The NTSB would not complete its report for months, so the Campbells took matters into their own hands.
We certainly weren't going to leave it to the NTSB to come up with the findings. We were going to follow through. And when the hearings ended, they had said that we could take whatever we wanted off the press table. And Susan walked up to the top table and yelled out, "There's a really good setup here." So grabbed a box and loaded in all of the documents that we could find up there.
Kevin's the most honest of people I know, but here he was taking something that we hadn't specifically been told we could take.
And we're heading out the door just as the NTSB were arriving back in with the trolley to pick up all their documents. So we were out the door and into a taxi and gone.
So we quickly realised we'd got a really good set of papers with a lot of things that hadn't been released to the public. We were able to really start our investigation in earnest at that stage.
The unpublished documents revealed a disturbing catalogue of problems with the forward cargo door, going right back to its original design. Instead of a plug door that gets jammed into its frame as the aircraft pressurizes, Boeing opted for an outward opening door. This allowed for more cargo space, but was not fail-safe like the plug design. So Boeing built what they believed was a foolproof locking mechanism.
What they do is they build in multiple redundancies to make sure the door is properly latched and does not open. And you build it in to a point of that it's extremely improbable that the door would ever open.
So what went wrong on Flight 811? The Campbells soon discovered that the problem lay in the design of the locking mechanism. To lock the cargo door on the 747, electric motors rotate C-shaped latches around pins in the door frame. A handle then moves arms, known as locking sectors, over the top of the C latches to prevent them from reopening. But as early as 1975, problems were found with the locking sectors. Kevin Campbell, an engineer by training, built a model to show the weakness in the Boeing design.
Initially, the locking sectors were made in aluminium, and in 1975, Boeing realised that they weren't strong enough, and they actually doubled up the aluminium to make it double thickness. But it still wasn't strong enough, and a lot of the airlines didn't even put the doublers on anyway.
The weakness of the aluminium drastically increased the risk of the door accidentally opening.
With the aluminium locking sectors, if the C-locks tried to backwind, open electrically, it would just push the locking sector out of the way. It just simply wasn't up to the job that it was designed for.
For 20 years, 747s have been flying with this crucial weakness. The Campbells wondered what else remained to be revealed. They redoubled their efforts to uncover the full truth behind the accident that had killed their son.
We bought a car and set off in the United States to see as many people who were involved with the accident as possible. We started at Seattle, down to Denver, across to Chicago, through to Washington, D.C., down to Kentucky, on to Miami, and back across to San Diego, back up through San Francisco, back to Seattle. And that was just one trip.
The Campbells soon found that a shockingly similar incident to Flight 811 had given clear warnings of the dangers in the cargo door. In 1987, 2 years before Flight 811, a Pan Am 747 had been climbing out of Heathrow when it failed to pressurize at 20,000 feet. The pilots had to turn back.
When they got back to Heathrow, they found that the door was hanging open 1.5 inches at the bottom, and all of the locks were open. When it got to the maintenance base, they found that all of the locking sectors were either bent or broken.
Why had the sea latches turned and bent back the locking sectors? Boeing claimed that the ground crew must have mishandled the mechanism.
The door had been closed manually, and what they said happened was that the guy wound the sea locks closed, 98 turns of a speed wrench. He closed the outer handle and then wound it open again. And if to be in the position that they were found in when the aircraft got back, he would have had to wind them open 98 turns. And this is just absolutely ridiculous.
But the Campbells' investigation uncovered another vital clue to why the sea latches had turned. A report by Pan Am engineers highlighted problems with the door's electrical system.
It had a fault in the S2 master latch lock switch that should have turned off the power to the door when the outer handle was closed.
This was an alarming finding. When the outer handle was closed, the S2 master lock switch was meant to disconnect the power supply and stop the sea latch motors from turning. So could this have failed, allowing the motors to open the door? To find out, Boeing asked the airlines to do a simple test. Close the outer handle, then press the switch to open the door, and see what happens.
When they hit the switch, it actually worked. The Boeing thought, you know, this is not going to work, but it actually worked. There was power to the door locks with the outer handle closed, and the lock started to move, and it started to force the locking sectors out of the way. And a few days later, the airline started ringing in and saying it was damaging their planes. So Boeing stopped the test. But it meant that on those aircraft, the S2 switch had failed, which is a silent failure. And all of those aircraft were likely to have the same problem as 811. They were just waiting for a short circuit to open the doors.
The Campbells now became convinced that the accident on Flight 811 began with a failure of the S2 switch. Power remained on to the sea latch motors. All it took was a short circuit in the 20-year-old wiring, which had been found to be frayed on other aircraft, to start the motors up. The aluminium locking sectors were too weak to stop the latches turning, and the cargo door burst open.
The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the...
After waiting a year for the NTSB report, Kevin and Susan Campbell expected it to match their theory of what had led to the accident on Flight 811.
I assumed that we would have a report come out that this was an electrical malfunction, and was staggered when they came out and said that the door had been mishandled.
The report focused entirely on the fact that the door lock must have been mishandled by the ramp attendant. That was disappointing, and we felt that they must have been at a different hearing from the one we were at.
So how had the NTSB come to their conclusion?
There was other evidence that we had found during our investigation of improper procedures by the United mechanics and ramp people. So we were convinced that there was, we could use the word abuse being done on the doors. The doors were sort of abused and weren't maintained very well. We concluded that the probable cause was mechanical.
For the Campbells, the NTSB's failure to mention the electrical problems just wasn't good enough.
What they said happened was the door was closed, the locks didn't fully close, they just partially closed, just hanging on the pins, and then they closed the outer handle. But it just simply can't happen because that part of the locking sector is still intact. Just simply can't happen. You can't close the outer handle unless these are in the fully locked position. It's the only way that the outer handle will close. And just closing this manually, you can't exert enough force to actually damage this part of the locking sector. All it does is just butts up against there. If the locks aren't fully closed, it just simply butts up against them and goes no further.
They went back to investigating the accident on Flight 811 and soon found disturbing evidence of how it could and should have been prevented. After the Pan Am incident in 1987, it turned out that Boeing had issued a directive to the airlines on how to correct the weak aluminium locking sectors.
The airworthiness directive that came out was to replace the aluminum sectors with steel sectors that could not be bent. And there were some some interim requirements for inspections to be performed until what they call terminating action, the steel sectors were installed.
The fix was cheap and simple, but getting it done was not.
The actual cost of the modification, changing these locking sectors to steel, was $2,000 per aircraft. But it took 10 hours to do it, and that's where the money was. Taking the aircraft out of service for 10 hours, that's millions of dollars.
The Campbells found that back in 1987, the Federal Aviation Administration, who were meant to enforce improvements, had given the airlines 18 months to comply with the modification. Within a year, Lee Campbell and 8 others would die in an avoidable accident. So why weren't the airlines forced to fix the problem sooner?
If these airplanes, these large commercial airplanes, are grounded, it's an economic disaster. So what they do is they lobby in the regulatory agency in the United States, it's the FAA, to allow them to do the fixes over time when the airplanes are in for normal maintenance. And that way, they're not taken out of service. But when they do that, when they allow the airlines, the air carriers, and the manufacturers to fix these over time, in essence what the FAA is doing is they're gambling with the lives of the passengers and the crew that are flying the airplanes during the time they're not fixed.
After the deaths on Flight 811, the FAA instantly shortened the deadline for fixing the cargo door from 18 months to just 30 days.
It was only when United had gone from one of the airlines of first resort to one of the airlines of last resort in New Zealand that they just totally out of the blue, we got a letter inviting us over to see them. And when we got there, they were just going to do a PR exercise on us. But we just laid into them, pointed out where they'd all got it wrong.
And you could see them changing during it to realising that we did know what we were talking about and that we'd put a lot of serious effort into it.
One of them actually broke down because they'd never had to meet next of kin before. And it ended up with the Vice President of United taking us round the maintenance facility, and he had people running off in all directions just to get the information that we wanted, questions answered. We could go anywhere that we wanted, and everything was laid on for us because at that stage they realised that we really did know what we were talking about.
The pressure of the Campbells' campaign eventually began to pay off. The vital piece of evidence that could prove them right, the cargo door, still lay 2 miles down in the Pacific Ocean. But as articles appeared in the American press, the NTSB commissioned the US Navy to search for it. 100 miles south of Honolulu, a deep submersible began to trawl the seabed.
We went to Honolulu and waited there while they had their attempts. And they finally recovered the door from 14,000 feet of water, which was the deepest recovery ever at that time. and we were phoned within an hour of it coming out of the water.
But before the Campbells could see it, the door was swiftly removed to Boeing's plant in Seattle. The Campbells went in hot pursuit.
We went over to Boeing and they wouldn't show it to us. So they reckon that the crucial pieces had gone to the NTSB. So again, we got in the car and drove across to Washington, D.C. We arrived at Ron Schleid's office, and Ron looks at his watch and he says, "I can give you 5 minutes." So about 3 hours later, we had the pieces that they recovered in our hand, and they acknowledged that we're definitely correct. It was an electrical malfunction, and that they said they would fix the planes, they would make sure it never happens again, but just don't hold your breath that the report will ever be changed.
Even with the evidence of an electrical malfunction in their hands, the NTSB refused to change their report. Then, in June 1991, fate intervened. A 4-year-old United 747 was sitting on the apron in New York when the C-latch motors started up and the door opened itself.
There was no way that they could hide it any longer. They simply couldn't deny that it was an electrical malfunction that was covering it.
Was that in fact the actual...
Finally, the NTSB publicly issued a revised report that concurred with the Campbells' version.
There was an inadvertent failure of either the switch or the wiring that caused an uncommanded opening of the door.
It's nice that other people know that you're right and had been all along, and that the support that they had given you was vindicated.
The Campbells spent thousands of dollars of their own money on their campaign. They were never interested in a financial settlement for Lee's death, but they did persuade United and Boeing to set up a university scholarship in his name.
I couldn't have lived with myself if we had done no investigating ourselves. It was just something we both felt we needed to do. We didn't even discuss it. We just knew that's what we would do.
Yeah.
But despite long and public campaigns like that of the Campbells, critics fear that the airline industry has not learnt the lessons from Flight 811.
The regulatory agencies, they have a dual charge. One is to encourage aviation, and another is aviation safety. And when they get in a position where you have economics up against air safety, they tend to err on the side of economics rather than safety.
Serious accidents caused by known defects have continued to occur. In the 1990s, known problems with icing on aircraft wings caused a series of crashes. At least 3 planes have had fatal fires due to known dangers from flammable insulation material. And in 1996, a fully laden 747 blew itself up when known faults in the wiring are thought to have ignited flammable vapors in the fuel tanks. Inevitably, experts are skeptical about the aviation industry's record of balancing profit against prevention.
We've seen the wiring problem both in United 811, which was eventually turned out to be the cause of that accident, and also in TWA 800, where we had an explosion in the centerline fuel tank. The industry answer to 20 and 30-year-old wiring, and when the wiring can fray, break, crack, cause a short, which can either ignite fuel, like in TW 800, or open a cargo door, like in United 11. And what the industry says, don't touch it. Don't go in there. Don't inspect it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to remove it, because it's so brittle that if you go in there to try to fix it, you're going to do more damage than you're going to do good. And that's what I call the ostrich approach to maintenance and safety. You know, we've decided that you can have an spark of ignition in the centerline fuel tank of a large air carrier. But so far we've been lucky. We've only had one every 10 years. We've only blown up 3 or 4 airplanes. You know, to go in and replace this wiring would ground all these airplanes, would be astronomically expensive. You know, 1 airplane every 10 years, 1 airplane every 5 years, 200-300 people, cost of doing business. Cost of doing business. And that's a great economic analysis, and unless your mother or your child is on board one of these airplanes that happens to pay the price for their economic satisfaction.
For some of the survivors of Flight 811, the cost has been heavy.
Each crew member handled it differently. I know there are still 2 crew members that have never set foot on an aircraft again. It was very difficult for me. I was diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. You can't reason, you can't think. Making the slightest decision is very difficult. You're just at a total loss. So it was very difficult to cope with.
FedEx Flight 705.
Positive rate. Gear up, please.
A routine trip from Memphis, Tennessee to San Jose, California. Little do the crew know they will soon have to defend themselves against a determined attack intended to kill them all. Flight 705 will never reach its destination.
We've had an attempt to take over.
Investigators will uncover a meticulous plan and a desperate motive.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
It's April 1994. A FedEx cargo plane is on its way to California. It's a perfect day for flying.
Altimeters?
9s and 2s here.
But behind the cockpit, in the galley area, a disaster is about to unfold. The pilots of FedEx Flight 705 are seconds away from an unprecedented situation.
God almighty. Center emergency.
He's had an attempted takeover.
We need an ambulance, and we need armed intervention.
Let me up,
April the 7th, 1994. Worldwide headquarters of Federal Express in Memphis, Tennessee. Servicing 171 countries, the company delivers over 2 million packages per day and works to a tight schedule. Flying conditions are perfect at the Memphis airport. FedEx Flight 705 to San Jose, California is preparing to depart with a 3-man crew.
Has the afternoon flight to San Jose got any jump seaters on it? None at all?
42-year-old Auburn Calloway is a flight engineer. He hopes to hitch a ride on Flight 705 for pressing personal reasons.
Thanks.
Employees have the privilege of free rides. They're known as jump seaters. 39-year-old flight engineer Andy Peterson is the first of the flight crew to arrive on the plane.
Andy Peterson, Auburn Calloway.
He's surprised to find Auburn Calloway on board.
My first thought was, well, scheduling has gotten, it's also called someone else out for the flight, and now we've got 2 engineers, so I said hey to him and then asked him if he was going to be riding out to San Jose with us, and he said he was, that he was going to ride the jump seat out.
Peterson, a 5-year flyer with FedEx, finds something unusual during his pre-flight check. The breaker switch of the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, is in the off position. Puzzled, Peterson resets it. The CVR records all in-flight voice communications. It's a crucial tool for investigating air disasters. No large commercial airliner is allowed to fly without one.
The cockpit voice circuit breaker, it had popped out, which meaning the power's off to the cockpit voice recorder. So I'd never seen that before, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird.
49-year-old pilot David Sanders and 42-year-old co-pilot James Tucker are next to board and prepare for departure.
You mind if I hop around with you guys, California?
No, not at all. I don't see any problems today. Everything looks good.
You play the guitar?
I play at it.
He was very cool, calm, collected, nothing indicating anything was amiss. Actually noticing there was a guitar case off to the right in front of the 9G net. But I couldn't wait to get in the cockpit and start going through cockpit checks because we had a lot to do.
But something was amiss. They didn't know it, but Callaway had originally been scheduled to be the flight engineer on this flight. However, he and his crew had exceeded their flying hours by just 1 minute the previous day, so they'd been replaced. But Callaway was determined to make Flight 705 no matter what.
I think she'll fly.
All the nuts and bolts are in?
Yeah.
When I came back out on the airplane and went back up to the cockpit, I noticed that that circuit breaker had popped out again. So I reset it and decided that I would see if it would stay in. Instead of calling maintenance at that time, that I'd just wait and see if it popped back out, that I would call maintenance, because that is a no-go item.
If the CVR is turned off, there will be no audio record of the events aboard Flight 705.
You want to fly this leg of the trip, or do you prefer the return trip?
You never know when you're going to get another chance.
I met Jim Tucker that afternoon. Jim had been with the company for 10 years. In fact, he was an instructor in the DC-10. Andy Peterson and I had had a trip together. In fact, we flew to Paris one time.
The crew is flying together for the first time. Both Tucker and Sanders are ex-Navy. Sanders has been with FedEx for 20 years. James Tucker, who has a wife and 3 children at home, has been with the company for 10 years. None of the crew know Callaway or his reasons for being on this flight.
Express 705, heavy runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Express 705 cleared for takeoff. Lights if you want them. I mean clocks if you want them. Lights are coming on. We'll get the vertical speed wheel here in a minute.
How's the checklist look?
All right, before takeoff is complete.
Your airplane?
Set standard power, please, before they change their mind.
Power is set. Knots.
Head checks.
V1, rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up, please.
FedEx Flight 705 is airborne and westward bound. The weather to California is clear, and if all goes as planned, they'll be back home within 10 hours. But back in the cargo area, Auburn Callaway is launching a different plan. A plan he's been shaping and reshaping for several days. Like the brilliant chess player he is, Callaway has thought out all his moves. Being bounced from the crew of Flight 705 today was an unexpected glitch, but nothing he can't cope with. At his home that morning, Callaway already had to make a small adjustment to his plans. The flight bag he'd planned to take with him on his journey is in for repairs, so instead he packs a guitar case. As a company employee, he's unlikely to be searched, and a guitar case seems innocent enough.
Here you have a man who made some accomplishments that no other
African American had ever made.
Callaway graduated from Stanford University in 1974. He became a top Navy flyer, then a commercial pilot, but his 5 years at FedEx have been as a flight engineer.
He was highly intelligent, a driven person to accomplish goals, and had before him an opportunity of a tremendously positive career. He was married and had children and family, and it just seemed as though he was almost part of the true American dream, just about the American family.
Before leaving for the airport, Callaway put some important documents on his bed. Among them, his last will and testament. FedEx Flight 705 is several minutes outside Memphis, still climbing and passing through 5,800 meters. Jim Tucker is hand-flying the airplane, using control wheel steering mode and enjoying the clear afternoon skies. A couple of meters away sits Auburn Callaway. Behind him lie frustrated expectations of a brilliant career and a marriage that ended in tears.
2 minutes? 9s and 2s here.
After takeoff is complete.
Callaway has a terrifying plan. His guitar case is packed with several hammers and a spear gun. Out of sight of the crew, he gets his weapons ready. To be successful, Callaway will have to act quickly. Speed and strength will be critical. Callaway is a former Navy pilot and a martial arts expert, so speed and strength come as part of the package.
The original plan was to take out his original crew, which would have only been 2 individuals. One was a female, much smaller than the crew that he wound up facing on Flight 705.
No, I live in Fisherville.
Fisherville. Great spot.
I had the cockpit door locked open. I noticed that Callaway was walking up into the cockpit. I just caught him out of the corner of my eye and basically saw his, his arm coming up, and I thought, well, he's just coming up to sit and talk with us for a while.
Excruciating pain, blinding pain. So much, in fact, that I never lost consciousness, but I lost useful consciousness for at least 45 seconds.
A blow to the head will rattle the brain. It will shake it enough that the electrical connections momentarily are not working, and it can be anywhere from a complete, irretrievable loss of consciousness to simply a stun, or to what he describes as a period of time where he was somewhat aware of what was going on, but could not respond to it.
I was slumped back like this, and he looked, I remember, right in my eyes as he passed over. It was almost probably like, well, the lights are on, but there's nobody home here. This guy is out of action, so I'll move on to the next person.
The crew is in shock and confused.
What I saw was simply a face in his eyes and an object coming down at me. I didn't discern any emotion or hate or anger. I just saw a threat, and I didn't really know what the threat was, because it's so shocking. And for a crew member who is a pilot in uniform to attack another pilot is unheard of in the airline industry.
Although terribly injured, Peterson and Tucker are still alive.
Get him! Get him! Get him!
Callaway hurriedly retreats out of the cockpit. Unaware of each other's injuries, the crew starts to mobilize. Callaway has a backup plan. The spear gun stashed outside the cockpit is a deadly weapon.
Sit down! Sit down! Get back to your seats! This is a real gun, and I'll kill you!
There was a loud ringing in my ear, and I was a little unbalanced. But I saw this spear gun, and I thought, well, the only thing I can do is try to grab it. So I grabbed the spear. It sticks out of the spear gun about, 4 inches or so. So I grabbed it right behind the barbs and tried to hang on to it real tight.
Tucker does something that Callaway is not expecting. He pulls back the yoke and puts the plane into a sudden 15-degree climb. It throws the struggling men out of the cockpit into the galley behind.
I had already figured out that what I had in my hands is probably one of the best weapons available, and that was the aircraft itself.
Tucker has not been just a Navy pilot, but a combat instructor flying A-4s. His fighter pilot experience would prove invaluable in the next few minutes.
I was looking at this whole situation as if it was an air combat maneuvering situation.
Get him!
We're taught in the Navy and in the fighter community as the first thing you want to do is engage the bogey, engage the bad guy. You make him predictable by engaging him, and you use his predictability then against him, and then you kill the bogey.
Get him! Get him! Get him!
But the co-pilot doesn't stop there. Tucker immediately rolls the massive aircraft to the left in an acrobatic maneuver to try and disarm Callaway. The men roll along the smoke curtain to the left side of the plane.
I knew that I had to do something very abrupt, very, very rough, and something that he would not be expecting.
Tucker has no idea whether rolling the plane is helping Sanders and Peterson as they try to restrain Callaway. The fight continues with the men pinned to the left side of the plane. The crew members are rapidly losing blood and strength. Tucker continues to execute the roll, all the while trying to maintain a visual reference outside the captain's window.
Get him, Andy, I got the airplane.
So you roll the airplane over on its back and pull through completely in the vertical. But at this particular point, if I'd rolled the airplane over on its back, I wouldn't really be able to see what I was doing. This is not a bubble canopy that you have over the top. You're actually looking out. It's got expansive windows, but nonetheless, you roll this airplane over on its back, you can't really see that much of what you're doing. So I rolled it to about 140 degrees where I could still see out over the side as the airplane's nose was starting to come through.
Tucker rolls the 250,000-kilogram DC-10 to 140 degrees, almost on its back. Commercial aircraft are never meant to roll more than 60 degrees. The men continue their fight on the ceiling of the aircraft. Callaway wrenches the hammer in his hand free and hits Sanders in the head. Tucker decides to pull back on the yoke and put the plane into a steep dive, a risky but cunning move. The G-force of the dive pushes the men back along the ceiling to the smoke curtain. The plane is traveling at a very dangerous speed. Tucker is making demands of the aircraft for which it was not designed. DC-10s are never meant to be flown past 695 kilometers per hour. Tucker is over 800 kilometers per hour. No DC-10 in history has been flown so fast and survived.
The airspeed indicator was maxed. It was all the way to what we call the barber pole. Couldn't go any faster, but you could tell that you were going quite a bit faster because of things you don't normally hear in a jet that size, and one is the incredible amounts of sound of wind coming across the cockpit.
The plane approaches supersonic speed. With the increased airspeed, the airflow over the stabilizer becomes disrupted. The elevators begin to flutter back and forth. If the flutter becomes more pronounced, they may become inoperable, and Tucker will no longer have the means to pull the plane out of the dive.
If I didn't pull out soon, the airplane was probably going to come apart because I was getting into a phenomenon known as Mach tuck, where the airplane is pitching over because the airspeed is increasing so much. The wind flow over the surfaces of the wings is doing things that it's not even designed to do.
The injury to the left side of Tucker's brain is beginning to paralyze functions on the right side of his body. Tucker notices something alarming. The plane is traveling at this incredible speed because the throttle levers have been left in their automatic climb setting from takeoff. The The DC-10 is now in a vertical dive with the engines at nearly full power. Tucker must release his only usable hand from the yoke to pull back on the throttles. With power reduced to idle, the DC-10 is still not out of danger. Despite Tucker's maneuvers, Callaway is gaining the upper hand.
Callaway hit me with the third blow, which was in the top of my head, nearly rendered me unconscious. I began to gray out. At that very same time, it occurred to me we might lose this thing.
As Tucker starts to pull the plane carefully out of the dive, the elevator flutter increases. Balance panels, counterweights that help the pilots manipulate the elevator, break free and begin to wrinkle the skin of the stabilizer. Tucker fears that if he pulls back too hard during the dive, all the surfaces on the tail section would be in danger of coming off. Sanders' strength is nearly spent, and Peterson's head is bleeding profusely from his ruptured temporal artery. Somehow they manage to pin their attacker down.
The G-forces began to be reduced as he began to level off from pulling out of the dive. I saw the hammer in Callaway's hand. I then reached for the hammer with both my hands and pulled the hammer out of his hand.
Sanders believes this is a turning point. The plane is safe for the moment. About a minute after the attack begins, Tucker finally has a chance to radio Memphis.
Center emergency.
Air traffic controller Kent Fleshman and his trainee receive Tucker's emergency request.
Aircraft with emergency, say again.
Center.
Aircraft with emergency, say again.
Listen to me. It's Express 705. I've been wounded. We've had an attempt to take over and aboard the airplane. Give me a vector, please. Back to Memphis at this time. Hurry.
Express 705, fly heading 095, direct Memphis.
095. Direct to Memphis. Get me an ambulance and alert the airport facility. Hey, Memphis, you still with me?
Affirmative 705, descend and maintain 10,000.
Fleshman takes action in case the hijacker has a gun. If he can get the plane below 3,000 meters, a bullet hole in the fuselage will not cause explosive decompression. Tucker hears the fight increase in the galley. Again, he uses his only weapon, the aircraft. The maneuver throws the men onto the side of the plane.
Let go of the spear! Look, just keep talking to me, okay?
Express 705, affirmative. If you need an ambulance, stand by and we'll get that for you.
Yeah, we need an ambulance, and we need armed intervention as well.
Make sure and notify the SWAT team he's asking for armed intervention.
Fleshman recognizes the term armed intervention as the most serious request from a pilot. It means they want armed officials to storm the plane upon landing. Memphis approach has to be alerted.
We have an emergency, Express 705. He's had an attempted takeover on the aircraft.
He's had an attempted takeover? Okay. Radar contact, put him on 119.1.
Paul Candelino, a 44-year-old veteran controller, now spots Flight 705 on his radar screen. But something's wrong. The plane is heading away from the airport. It looks like the hijacker has seized the plane. The crew of FedEx Flight 705 has been attacked by a co-worker and have declared an emergency.
Intervention.
Air traffic control watches helplessly as they fly away from the airport, while the fight for control of the plane continues. Co-pilot James Tucker is pushing the DC-10, his best weapon, to its limits. He now throws the wheel round, flipping the massive plane in the opposite direction. Tucker, drawing on his military experience, reverses the role, keeping his maneuvers unpredictable.
Here I am, all alone in the cockpit. The fight is still going on in the back. I don't know who's winning, I don't know who's losing. And that was about the only time I really had time to be frightened, and it was a very horrifying situation at that point, thinking that quite possibly Auburn was winning.
3.5 minutes after the attack, though pinned and injured, Auburn Calloway will not relinquish the spear.
The anger was coming in then, and so when I hit him, it was with the intent to disable him and eliminate his ability to fight. Not kill, but to injure him sufficiently that he could fight no more. So when I swung the hammer, it was with all the strength that I had.
Sanders and Peterson momentarily subdue Calloway.
Put it on autopilot. Hey, get back here.
The captain's yelling at Tucker to come and help, but he's the one flying the plane.
Express 705. Contact Memphis approach on 119.1. They are aware of your emergency.
Jim, quick, Jim. Request a single frequency approach.
Single frequency approach, roger. We'll pass that along. 119.1.
Put it on autopilot.
Come on, Jim, quick!
Get back here.
But you have to understand that that's probably the strangest request that I've ever had, come my way, because here I am, the only one up front in the cockpit. Now, and for me to go ahead and get up and go to the back means I've got to, first of all, stand up, which I didn't know until the particular time I tried to stand up. It was very, very difficult to do so.
Jim Tucker, with a fractured skull and only one side of his body functioning, puts the plane on autopilot and struggles out of his seat to help.
Hey, wait a minute, I'm coming. Autopilot.
But the plane's gyros haven't stabilized sufficiently for the autopilot to take over.
Okay.
Now, no one's flying the plane.
705 Heavy, how do you hear?
Paul Candelino tries to establish radio contact with Flight 705, but there's no response. Their radar screens show the aircraft turn to the north, then the west, finally southwest, heading away from the airport. There's only an eerie silence. Anything could be happening on board the plane.
As I stepped into the forward cargo area, I was absolutely amazed at what I was seeing. All three of the individuals are completely covered with blood. Auburn Calloway on his back. There are papers everywhere in the back. You can see where the jump seats, which is just a normal commercial airline seat, has had the covers torn off. There's bloody footprints on the top of the ceiling. There are coats that have come out of closets. It's total carnage in the back.
Sanders has disarmed Calloway and handed the spear to Tucker.
You move up to it.
You keep him contained. I'm going to get the airplane.
Go get the airplane.
They decide that Sanders, the captain, should fly the plane back to Memphis.
You take this.
Tucker wants the weapons as far away from Calloway as possible and asks Sanders to take them with him to the cockpit.
In an emergency situation, it's expected that the captain of the airplane will fly the airplane. I was in somewhat of a daze because of the fight. I wasn't sure of the direction of the airplane. I wasn't sure of the condition of the airplane, but it appeared to be flying okay. I was bleeding excessively from the top of my head. I couldn't see out of my left eye. I thought the fight was over. I mean, I had hit Calloway 4 times in the head with a 20-ounce framing hammer as hard as I could swing it. He had stopped fighting, and he was bleeding, and he looked like he was severely injured.
Tucker can't tell anymore whether his hand is gripping the spear. The blows to his head have caused a blood clot on his brain and have damaged his sense of touch.
Let me up! Let me up! I won't fight anymore, please! I can't breathe!
Though several gashes have been opened in his skull, Auburn Calloway cannot be trusted. Both pilots know their strength is quickly running out.
I can't breathe!
Sanders, safely back in the driver's seat, must get the plane on the ground, and fast.
Memphis, can you hear me?
Is this Express 705 Heavy?
705 Heavy, yes.
Express 705 Heavy, Memphis. Roger, I do hear you. You can proceed direct to Memphis if able. Expect runway 9er. The altimeter is 30.29er.
You understand we're declaring an emergency. We need security to meet the airplane. We'll stop on the runway if we can.
Captain Sanders, without his glasses and with blood dripping into his eyes, thinks that the plane is on a course back to the airport. But it's still heading southwest, away from Memphis at over 550 kilometers per hour.
Roger. Express 705 Heavy, is the situation under control? Or is it still in progress?
We appear to have it under control.
Candelino wants to warn the pilot, but he's afraid the crew may still be under attack and trying to mislead the hijackers by flying in the wrong direction.
Express 705 Heavy, are you able to turn toward the airport?
Yeah, give me a vector.
100 Vector Memphis.
Sanders takes the plane off autopilot and sets a course back to the airport.
We're turning to the airport now.
For now, aboard the DC-10, the situation seems under control, but a potential disaster is only moments away. At the Memphis airport, emergency personnel begin to move into position.
We need security to meet the airplane. We'll stop on the runway if we can.
A FedEx cargo plane is about to land after a would-be hijacker tried to seize control. All members of the crew are badly injured. Paramedic David Teague is one of the first to get the call.
They came over the loudspeaker system from the air traffic control center, and I was new to the area, so I wasn't able to understand them real well. But I got the words hijacking and some other stuff, and was advised that there had been a hijacking on an airplane, and then dispatched us out to the runway where the plane was going to be landed.
The airplane is heading for the safety of Memphis Airport, but that in itself presents another scary possibility. The aircraft is more than 16,000 kilos over the recommended landing weight, with more than 38,000 kilos of fuel still in its tanks. In most emergency landing situations, there's time and opportunity to dump any excess fuel. But Sanders knows the switches and levers are too far away to access safely.
You'd have to get up and go back to the engineer's panel where the fuel dumping switches are and set up the engineer's fuel panel to dump fuel. So it's virtually impossible for, say, the captain to dump fuel while he's attempting to fly the airplane.
In the galley, Auburn Calloway still hasn't given up the fight. Calloway drags himself towards the jump seats with Peterson and Tucker on top of him. He hopes to gain enough leverage to get back on his feet, where he'll have an advantage.
He was using his thumbs to go ahead and try and push my eyes out, doing everything he possibly could to break Andy and I down as a team. You know, we could handle him together, but we certainly couldn't handle it one-on-one. This is certainly a fight against the clock. Auburn's getting stronger. We're getting weaker.
I knew if he ever got back in the cockpit, we were history. I just knew we had to keep him. Somehow, we had to keep him from getting back in that cockpit.
Approaching 7,000 feet, the fight in the back started again. And it was as violent and as loud as when I was in the back in the midst of the fight. It became so violent and loud that approaching 7,000 feet, I decided that I was going to level the airplane, turn on the autopilot, go to the back of the airplane, and kill Calloway. It was so severe, I thought that had to be done.
The DC-10 is less than 40 kilometers from Memphis Airport.
Is he under control?
I don't know.
The sound of the struggle worries Sanders. He decides this has to end.
I released the seatbelt, climbed out of my seat, headed to the back of the airplane, and Jim Tucker said to me, "David, I think we have him under control now." I said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah, he is.
He said, "I think we have him under control." I went back to the seat, climbed into the left seat of the airplane, continued the descent on down toward the airport.
Express 705 Heavy, verify the situation is still under control?
Yeah, it's sort of under control.
Wind is 03015, cleared to land runway 9er.
Clear to land?
Now Sanders faces yet another possible disaster. The delay caused by getting out of his seat means he's way over the normal approach speed. too high and too fast. He'll not be able to slow the overweight plane quickly enough to land on runway 9er.
I'm coming around to 36 left.
Runway 36 left is longer at 2,800 meters, but it's perpendicular to his flight path. To land there, he needs to make a series of turns, reasonable maneuvers for a fighter jet or a crop duster, but for an overloaded DC-10 with an injured pilot, nearly impossible. First, he must turn 90 degrees to the right, fly parallel to the runway, and then execute a tight 180-degree turn.
Okay, Express 705 Heavy, runway 36 left, cleared to land. Cleared visual approach 36 left. Wind is 050 at 8.
Bank angle.
Sanders must ignore the computer warnings and push the plane beyond normal operating limits. The plane is nearly on its side.
All of a sudden, he just turned it up on his wingtip, looked like a fighter jet, and put it in a real tight turn, and then disappeared down behind the terminal. When he got down low enough, we couldn't see him. And at first, I thought he might have crashed because there was some construction going on the airport at that time, and there was some smoke coming up south of the terminal, kind of where we were going.
A hammer is lying in the galley. The men struggle to reach it. This could be Calloway's last chance to gain control. Sanders has turned 90 degrees to the south, flying the downwind leg parallel to runway 36 left.
The airplane was probably at about 300 feet above the ground at that time. The throttles are at idle. They've been at idle since I left 7,000 feet. That's an extremely unusual engine power setting to land a big airplane. You always land, make the approach with power on, a lot of power on. In this case, it was at idle because I wanted the airplane to slow down so that we would not exceed the limits of the landing gear and the flaps, so that we would touch down at or below 195 knots.
With flaps extended and landing gear down, Sanders is still coming in too fast, and he's being bombarded by computerized auto-warning alarms. The runway is 2,800 meters long. A normal DC-10 needs only 1,900 meters to stop, but Flight 705 is too heavy. Even this runway may not be long enough. Peterson manages for the first time in the fight to get hold of a hammer, but is extremely weak due to blood loss.
You gotta hit him, Andy! You gotta hit him!
I was almost like pleading with him, and I told him, I said, Andy, you know, you got to hit him. You know, he's about ready to, to take us down.
And I guess I gave him kind of a blank stare of, what are you talking about? And he looked at me real stern, like a father would look at his son, saying, you've got to do this. And he said, hit him.
The DC-10 is only meters above the runway, traveling at 382 kilometers per hour. Sanders can only hope he won't explode the tires or crash beyond the runway. Luckily, all 10 tires withstand the landing impact. Captain David Sanders has landed the plane with only 300 meters of runway to spare. The crew of Flight 705 is safely on the ground, but not out of danger.
Blow the door!
The chute is covered with kind of a talcum powder, so it won't stick when it needs to be deployed, but it made it slick trying to go up.
The police and firemen tried to climb up the slide. One fireman made it almost all the way to the top, and I leaned out the door of the airplane and pulled him on board.
Who's the bad guy?
That's the attacker.
There was blood all over the floor, all over the ceiling. The seats in the little area were just covered with blood.
You got any handcuffs? If not, you better get some, because that son of a bitch is still dangerous.
I need handcuffs. Can you throw me some handcuffs?
Teague is thrown a pair of handcuffs.
Stand here in the middle of the chain.
Ouch! Get your foot off! You're hurting me! Ow!
Sanders holds Calloway down as Teague examines Peterson, who barely has a pulse and is the first crew member to leave the plane. Sanders is the last member of the crew on board.
Standing in the door of the airplane, I had a sense of euphoria I've never experienced before or since. It was the sense of we had been there, and we came back and we won.
Due to the strength and courage of its crew, a FedEx DC-10 has safely landed back home. The three men have weathered the attack of a co-worker, but they're badly injured. Co-pilot Jim Tucker has bone chips driven into his brain. Flight engineer Andy Peterson's life is in danger from massive blood loss. Both are in critical condition. The wounded men are rushed to the regional medical center at Memphis. The pilot, Dave Sanders, shares an ambulance with Tucker. It's only during this ride that he realizes the extent and severity of his co-pilot's injuries. Tucker is taken to emergency by stretcher. Sanders is helped, but can walk. Restrained and under guard, Calloway is also taken to the same emergency facility. But the important question still remains: why did Auburn Calloway attack the crew of Flight 705? The full story is beginning to unfold. Divorced in 1990, Auburn Calloway still tries to support his ex-wife and their two children, and wants to secure their financial future.
He was very interested in the welfare of his children, very interested that they not live the kind of childhood he had lived.
The evidence for a suicidal mission against FedEx grows as investigators search the aircraft and find a letter to Calloway's estranged wife.
Dear Pat, I want you and the kids to know that I lived for you. I thought of your welfare every day. Though, for example, how can I guarantee having enough money for Keela and Bernie's Stanford education?
He was obsessed with his financial well-being. He was interested in his children. I tend to believe he's interested in his marriage. And I know his marriage was coming apart, or had come apart, basically, at the time of this incident. But I suspect he was also a difficult man to be married to.
By April the 7th, 1994, Calloway may be thinking his career is over. Life had been one disappointment after another. The failed marriage, the kids he can't afford to send to university, the brilliant pilot who ends up as an engineer on a cargo plane. And now even that may be about to go. The following day, he's supposed to report to a FedEx hearing about falsified information he'd given the company.
During our investigation, it appeared that he had overestimated the number of hours of flight experience that he had, and that the company was taking a look at this.
Calloway may be afraid he'll be fired. At just 42, his professional life could be finished. He comes up with a solution.
The goal is to leave my children well off. The goal is to escape, I guess, the pain of this life. I can't continue to participate in this life and still leave them well off because I'm fixing to lose my career. And I won't have the ability to provide for them like I'd like to. But my life has value if it's given in an accident.
Calloway cashes in all the funds he can lay his hands on and sends a total of $54,000 to his ex-wife. But his life insurance is worth about $2.5 million if he dies in a work-related accident.
I would much rather go on a date, time, place, and a method of my own choosing. I resolved some time ago that the next time my security and future is threatened or seriously jeopardized, it's time. My time to go.
Perhaps he believes his family would receive the maximum insurance payout if he crashed the plane in an apparent accident. If this was Calloway's idea, he was planning it perfectly. He was armed with unusual weapons for hijacking, hammers and a spear gun. After injuring the crew, he could take control of the plane. A bomb or gun could leave traces at the scene of a crash, but if investigators found a spear gun or hammers, it would be very difficult to tie them to an attack on the crew.
I believe it would have been impossible to tell the difference in the type of injuries that a hammer would have made with the type of injuries that you might sustain in a large crash. Auburn had spent the week leading up to this incident preparing to die and basically get his affairs in order.
Calloway even goes to a lawyer to change his will before boarding the FedEx flight.
He left his will and testament on his bed so that it would be easily found.
For any crash to look like an accident, there is a key obstacle: the plane's cockpit voice recorder. Switching off the CVR's power would disable any recording.
I think she'll fly.
As long as all the nuts and bolts are there.
Yeah.
If Peterson in his pre-flight inspection discovers the thrown switch, it would be a setback. But Calloway would know he simply has to fly the airplane for half an hour. That's the length of the tape's recording time. After 30 minutes, any incriminating recording would be gone forever.
I think he was going to do something very, very horrible with it. Something along the lines of what we've seen on 9/11.
Had Calloway been able to seize control of the plane, he could have crashed the DC-10 with over 38,000 kilos of fuel aboard into any site, including the FedEx headquarters, the hub, crippling his employer and killing a large number of workers on the ground. It would have been the ultimate revenge for perceived injustices by the company.
The company may never have figured out exactly why that airplane crashed back into the hub.
Well, after 9/11, there were a lot of improvements to our security program, both in the United States and worldwide. Our cockpit crew members are the most highly checked and monitored group of people in the world. I only know of this one incident in my 46 years of aviation experience where a crew member was involved in something like this.
The flight of FedEx 705 took about 30 minutes, but the impact it had will last for years.
He was convicted of attempt aircraft piracy, an offense that carried a minimum of 20 years confinement and up to life in prison.
Although Auburn Calloway pleaded temporary insanity at his trial, the jury didn't believe him and found him guilty. On August the 11th, 1995, he was sentenced to life imprisonment in a federal penitentiary. He has no chance of parole.
The pilots on Flight 705, they are the real heroes. It is amazing that they were able to do what they did, given the injuries that were inflicted upon them.
When someone's struck with a hammer on the skull, there can be linear radiating cracks that go out on the skull. And then if it's hard enough, there may well be in-driven bone right at the site where the hammer head hits the skull and drives it into the skull.
This is a replica of my skull cap. It was put together by use of a CAT scan protocol to give the proper shape of my skull and also the shape of the defect that we're dealing with here. This is the area that I was hit on the left parietal. For a year and a half, I was actually walking around in this configuration. It took 2.5 years to recover completely because I had to learn how to walk, talk, and chew gum all over again. I had 3 major operations.
I operated on him twice more after his initial injury and then followed him through his rehabilitation.
They can fashion a piece of material to fit the exact size of the defect, the shape of the skull, and of course the thickness of the skull as well. It's a blown acrylic called an HTR, or hard tissue replacement.
He had difficulty with speech, difficulty with sensation and motor strength on the right side, and he came back to where he can now probably, if he wanted to, break my fingers with a handshake.
On May the 26th, 1994, the crew of FedEx Flight 705 was awarded the Airline Pilots Association Gold Medal Award for heroism, the highest award a civilian pilot can receive. However, because of the legacy of their injuries, none of the crew has been certified as medically fit to fly commercially.
I always thought, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna overcome this thing. Except that that's when they found out that I had a slight seizure disorder. I'm seizure-free, but it's because I had to take medication. And the only way for me to be able to fly without somebody with me is to be off of medication. At this particular point, it's been ascertained that I'll never be able to do that. I'll be on medication for the rest of my life.
I miss the flying. Every time I see an airplane go over, I wonder where it's going. So I miss that part of it. But I really cherish the fact that, I'm still alive and able to be with my family.
The bond of pilots and what you do together in the airplane, outside the airplane, all that, I miss that. I miss it very much.
A brand new 767.
Fuel pressure. Why would that be?
How come I have no instruments?
A catastrophic failure at 26,000 feet.
Winnipeg, Air Canada 143.
Air Canada 143, go ahead.
Just lost both engines.
Holy cow!
I'm talking to a dead man.
How far are we from Gimli? You're approximately 12 miles from Gimli right now. I guess I'll just slip it.
The crew is out of options and running out of time. They're at the controls of a 95-ton jet that's quickly falling from the sky.
Mayday, Mayday.
In placid skies over central Canada, Air Canada Flight 143 is just past the halfway mark of its journey from Montreal to Edmonton, Alberta.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your first officer.
The plane is carrying 61 passengers and 8 crew members.
Beautiful day. Clear, temperature of 24 degrees Celsius.
It's July the 23rd, 1983.
There, that's coming along, huh?
Rick Dion is an Air Canada maintenance engineer.
I was going to Edmonton with my wife Pearl and my young son Chris, who was 4 years old, and this was the beginning of a 2-week vacation for us, and we were all pretty excited about going on this new airplane.
Compliment of the captain.
Oh, hey, Rob, thanks.
Whenever you want to come up to the flight deck.
This was my first flight on the modern 767, as the company had just acquired them.
I'll be back in a minute, okay?
I was interested in going to the cockpit to see all this new technology fit in with the work that I did on aircraft.
The captain on this flight is Bob Pearson. He's 48 years old, and he's spent more than 15,000 hours in the air. His first officer is Maurice Quintel, who has more than 7,000 hours of flying time.
Come on in.
Pardon me, gentlemen?
Rick.
I knew Bob Pearson from the small flying club that I attended in St. Lazare, and he was actually one of the local pilots there that used to do some gliding, and he also flew the ultralight lasers.
We had departed heading northwest.
A nice, clear, sunny day in July. We're flight plan at 39,000 feet. There were a few airplanes that flew that high in 1983. And we requested 41,000 feet, which got us further above the jet stream out of the west.
The crew may have accumulated a lot of hours in the air, but very few in this plane. It's Boeing's latest and most advanced wide-body jet, the 767. An army of microprocessors in the belly of the plane automates so many functions that the flight engineer's job has been eliminated. This is one of 4 767s that Air Canada has recently acquired. The plane itself has only 150 hours on it.
Quite a difference here, huh?
Oh, yeah. Reset on and start here.
The cockpit is different in that all the old instrumentation that we're accustomed to, mostly that was all gone. It was all CRT display, like small TV screens. It was a new high-tech airplane, which involved quite a change for the crew and the maintenance personnel, people handling it.
This is a new aircraft for both the captain and I. At the time, I had 75 hours on that airplane, so everything was new for me.
Pilots and maintenance crews are both still getting to know this airliner.
Well, then we get that same condition.
Captain Pearson explains to Dion how he handled a small problem with the engines on an earlier flight.
Comes back down to low stage and we just carry on.
You know, that brings up an interesting...
Fuel pressure. Why would that be?
Whoa.
A warning alerts the crew to critically low pressure at one of the plane's fuel pumps.
Something's wrong with the fuel pump.
The 767 has 3 main fuel tanks, 2 in the wings, which are always used, and 1 in the center, only used on long-distance flights. Electric fuel pumps draw fuel from each tank and feed it to the plane's 2 engines. The low-pressure warning could mean that one of the pumps needs maintenance, but it could also be a more serious issue, a lack of fuel to be pumped.
That forward fuel pump. It's just a bloody pump failing, I can tell you that.
Another low fuel pressure warning sounds, this one from another fuel pump on the plane's left side. Pearson's flight management computer tells him he should have plenty of fuel for the remainder of the trip. The 767 also has separate digital fuel gauges, but on this flight those gauges are out of service. The warnings don't make sense.
It got a little more interesting when the second fuel boost pump light came on for that tank, which was the left tank.
This seemed quite abnormal, that 2 pumps would fail in a brand new airplane. We had some kind of a problem that we didn't understand.
What would your assessment of that be?
My own personal thoughts? It might be low on the left tank.
I used to be involved with transferring fuel, and I know that when you're trying to empty a tank, it'll start flashing periodically, and then the pump will reprime, and then the light will go out. In this case, it appeared to do exactly the same thing.
Captain Pearson knows that if the left tank is running low, the right tank may be low as well.
Let's head for Winnipeg. Now.
Pearson wants to land as soon as possible in case he is running out of fuel. The crew is still more than 700 miles away from their original destination, Edmonton, Alberta. The nearest major airport is Winnipeg, Manitoba, a mere 120 miles away.
We're showing lots of fuel on board our flight management computer and 3 normal fuel checks, cross-checked with our fuel on our flight plan. So we elected to divert the flight to Winnipeg, where Air Canada has a main maintenance base.
Winnipeg Center?
Air Canada 143.
Air Canada 143, go ahead.
Ron Hewitt has 20 years' experience as a radar controller.
Yes, sir, we have a problem.
We're going to requesting direct Winnipeg.
Air Canada 143 cleared. Take position, direct Winnipeg.
You are cleared to maintain 6,000, descent, your discretion.
Send to 6,000 his discretion, and that was it. He didn't tell us what the problem was, and it's none of my business. Give him what he wants, get everybody out of his way. That's about what we do.
Okay, we're out of 410.
Pearson now begins to descend from 41,000 feet.
Oh man, we're all going out, eh?
The low-pressure warnings are spreading to more and more of the fuel pumps. Quintel instructs the cabin crew to prepare for an emergency landing.
Hello?
Cabin, we think we have problems with our fuel system.
We are diverting to Winnipeg.
All flight attendants to front galley, please.
I hope this is just false warnings. Rick, can you think of anything we haven't done?
No, I can't, Bob.
Okay. We've lost the left engine.
Losing an engine erases any doubt. Flight 143 is in fact running out of fuel.
Okay, checklist. Single engine landing.
Pearson is trained to land a 767 with one engine. No one has ever tried landing with none. He scrambles to get his plane down so that he doesn't become the first. With only one engine powering Air Canada Flight 143, and with the possibility of the other engine shutting down, the crew prepares the passengers for the worst.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your in-charge flight attendant speaking. Due to mechanical problems, we'll be preparing for an emergency landing. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts. Your crew is fully trained to deal with the situation, and as you may have noticed, some crew members have already started to prepare the aircraft.
I had no idea, like the rest of my crew members, that there was a problem with fuel. I had no idea why we were going to Winnipeg.
Approach and landing. Flaps will be 20.
Right.
Ground flap override.
As they're doing that drill, the right-hand fuel pump low pressure light was flashing as well, much like it did on the left. They were quite busy carrying out the first engine out, not watching the pump lights, which was right at my eyebrow, so I kind of knew that that one there was going to shut down too.
What was that?
Very shortly, we will begin giving you instructions.
How come I have no instruments?
Our beautiful colored engine and flight instrument displays simply went black.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. Please follow our instructions. Refrain from smoking and put your chair back in the upright position. Secure your seatbelt tightly against your hip.
It's exactly what Pearson had feared. He's lost both engines. At 26,500 feet, still 75 miles from the nearest major airport, he's out of fuel.
Winnipeg, Air Canada 143.
Air Canada 143, go ahead.
Just lost both engines.
When both engines shut off, I think he said, "Holy, I'm talking to a dead man."
We were trained in the simulator to handle a single engine failure. We had never practiced, and I don't believe most pilots ever get the chance to practice total engine failures.
143 just lost their engines.
It's highly unlikely that anybody's going to survive this, because I could see them trying to make a turn and spinning in.
An airplane's engines not only provide thrust, they also generate the power needed to manipulate the plane. It would be completely uncontrollable, but modern airliners are like a Swiss Army knife with one last blade hidden away. In the event of a loss of power, they automatically deploy the RAT, or ram air turbine.
It's spring-loaded, and the propeller that drives this small hydraulic pump is about the size of a propeller you would see like on a little Cessna 150. And this arm catapults down into the slipstream. This propeller starts to turn, drives this hydraulic pump, and it gives you basic systems.
I was pretty quiet, flying without motors.
Pearson knows that time is running out. He needs directions to the closest landing strip.
143, this is a Mayday, and we require a vector arm to the closest available runway. 143, we copy that all okay.
But the loss of the plane's engines has had an unexpected consequence at air traffic control.
They're gone. They were right here. We've lost him. He's dropped off the screen. I need primary radar.
Uh, 143, we've lost your transponder return and are attempting to pick up your target now.
We work on transponder, it's called secondary radar. We take the pilot signal to paint the aircraft.
Commercial jetliners are equipped with a transponder, a device that transmits coded information which air traffic controllers use to determine the plane's location. But when Flight 143 lost its second engine, only a small number of items got backup power. The transponder was not one of them, so the plane disappeared from Hewitt's screen. Flight 143 is somewhere east of Winnipeg, but no one knows exactly where or how far it is from the airport. In spite of its enormous weight, a 767 doesn't plunge from the sky when it loses its engines. Its aerodynamic properties keep it in the air, but slowly coasting to Earth.
And I was trying to figure how many miles we were moving ahead versus how many thousands of feet we were dropping.
But Quintel doesn't have the instruments which provide the information he needs to make that calculation. Since he lost the plane's signal, Hewitt can't give Quintel that information either. Controllers hurriedly work to rig up a way to find the plane.
Just before landing, you will hear the command, brace for landing. Brace immediately and stay braced until the plane comes to a complete stop. There are two ways to brace. One, bend forward. Raise your arms and hands against the seat back.
Bryce Bell is a businessman on his way home to Edmonton.
As soon as they announced that we were making an unscheduled stop in Winnipeg, I immediately wished I hadn't had the 2 drinks that I'd had, because I thought, you're going to have a split second here, and this plane's going to explode in flame, and the decision you make in that split second will depend on how alert you are.
Okay, please put your personal belongings in the seat back pocket.
The response of the passengers when we were doing the emergency briefing was basically alert. They were looking at us. They were paying attention to every word we were saying. I couldn't have had better passengers.
I think that's him. Let's say that's him.
Because their modern equipment can't see Air Canada 143, the controllers switch to old-fashioned radar, which doesn't need a transponder to locate planes.
I got to turn up my true radar, the reflective radar, which is not nearly as good. And we don't use it at all if we can help it.
Okay, I got it. 65 from Winnipeg, 45 from Gimli. 143.
We have you at 65 miles from Winnipeg and approximately 45 miles from Gimli.
For the first time since losing power, the pilots know their distance to Winnipeg.
We might make Winnipeg.
Quintel, however, thinks that Gimli is a safer bet. Gimli, Manitoba has a decommissioned Air Force base. It's about 20 miles closer than Winnipeg. As luck would have it, Maurice Quintel trained at Gimli while in the armed forces. He knows it well.
45 miles to Gimli. That is a long runway.
Is there emergency equipment at Gimli? negative emergency equipment at all. Just one runway available, I believe.
And no control tower and no information on it.
Pearson must consider the possibility of a crash landing. If he has any chance of making it to Winnipeg, which has full emergency support, he knows he must try for it.
Okay, then we would prefer Winnipeg. Fine. 143, continue your present heading.
We all reacted very businesslike and say something specifically to the situation, but never would we ever look at each other. I think we were all afraid that we might break down.
Parents were hugging their little kids, and people were busy scribbling away, which I found out afterwards where they were writing their notes to loved ones and their wills and all kinds of things like that. It was pretty nerve-wracking.
143, a question if you have the time.
Okay, go ahead.
Total number of persons on board, please.
The actual number of people on board is 69, but Quintel is overtaxed. He gives a lower number in error.
I have 33 people on board, including the crew.
Okay.
I have to ask if Sol's on board. I know he's busy. I don't want to ask him questions, but I have to. This thing can go down in the lake or the field. And I remember thinking, great. I know this airplane carries about 300 people. At least it's not 300.
It was about regrets. It was about things I hadn't done in my life. It was about ways I've treated the odd person here or there that I wish I'd treated more gently. It was about how stupid I was at some of the things I used to make big issues out of that are so insignificant when it really comes down to what real reality is about. It was pretty devastating.
And I remember telling a mother with a baby, and I had my daughter Victoria, and telling this woman that it was going to be okay. And I did it. I did. I was so proud of myself that I could be so straight with her and tell her that it was going to be all right and really look at her in the eyes.
Okay, and how far from the field are we now? You're 35, correction, make that 39 miles from Winnipeg. Roger.
Now that controllers can see Flight 143 on radar, they can provide Quintel with the information he needs to figure out if he can glide as far as Winnipeg.
Roger, what is your altitude now?
8.5.
8.5.
About 8,500 feet above the ground, Captain Pearson can see his destination. Winnipeg's airport is less than 35 miles away.
We're visual.
But the news from Quintel is not good.
Bob.
Morris was calmly keeping track of our distance by input from Winnipeg Air Traffic Control and our altitude, and calculated our profile and came to the conclusion that we might not make the runway in Winnipeg.
We can last maybe another 20 miles. We're not going to make Winnipeg.
Quintel has calculated that at the rate they're falling, they would hit the ground a full 15 miles short of the runway.
How far are we from Gimli? You're approximately 12 miles from Gimli right now. Where is it? Which way is he moving? On your right. Turn right to a heading of 345.
I would say you have 10 miles to fly.
Okay, fine. We're gonna go there.
I'm gonna go check on my family. You guys don't need me up here right now, huh?
No, we're okay.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. They got it under control. Just make sure your seatbelts are tight, all right?
When I went finally to sit down in my seat, this is where I thought, wow, this is it.
Landing gear down.
Roger.
First Officer Quintel lowers the landing gear. Because there's no hydraulic power, Quintel does what's known as a gravity drop, letting the gear's own weight drop and lock it into place. The two main gear are heavy, they fall immediately, and two green lights confirm they've locked. But the nose gear is lighter, it doesn't lock.
We could hear the main gear clearly, falling and locking. I was not aware that the nose gear was not down and locked.
It was sort of a last minute, and if it's something that you cannot control, you don't talk about it, you don't mention it, you know. The main thing was bring the aircraft on the runway.
5 miles to touchdown.
Roger. We have the field in sight.
5 miles from Gimli, Pearson and Quintel finally see a runway they can land on. But there's a problem.
We're too close, huh? It's going to be too steep, too fast.
Yeah, I know.
Pearson is almost at the runway, but he's much too high above it. If he comes down at a normal descent rate, he'll miss the landing strip. But if he comes down steeply, his plane will gather a dangerous amount of speed. He won't be able to stop before the end of the runway.
In a normal approach, we have leading edge and trailing edge flaps, which allow us to slow the airplane down and fly at a slower speed safely. We did not have those flaps as they run off the main hydraulic system.
So what are we gonna do? So we discussed, we had two possibilities. One of them was to do a 360-degree turn and lose the excess of altitude. On the other hand, I thought it would take about 3 minutes, and we were already descending at the rate of 2,500 feet a minute.
Only about 3,000 feet above the ground, the plane doesn't have enough altitude to make a full circle. It would hit the ground before making it back to the landing strip. Pearson chooses a second option.
Well, I guess I'll just slip it.
Pearson decides to try a maneuver called a side slip, practically unheard of on commercial airliners, but sometimes used by glider pilots. And Bob Pearson has a lot of experience flying gliders.
I'm just gonna slip it down till we're almost down at the runway, then I'll straighten it out.
Okay.
Side slipping involves what's known as crossing the controls.
Here we go.
Pearson plans to force the aircraft into a sideways freefall, allowing it to drop quickly without increasing its forward airspeed. Pearson has never actually performed a side slip in a glider, but he's attempting one now in a Boeing 767.
The only way that I could control our speed and our descent profile with the runway was to induce drag in the fuselage by cross-controlling the rudder and the elevators in the tail and the ailerons and the wingtips, and cause the aircraft into a crab configuration. Then I can vary that to increase or decrease our speed or increase or decrease our descent rate.
Pearson controls the plane's descent by using his rudders and ailerons to change the angle of the plane. Crossing the controls involves tipping the wings in one direction, but turning the aircraft in the opposite direction, pushing it sideways into the oncoming air. As Flight 143 begins to drop towards the Earth, Quintel is about to discover something he did not expect. The runway he trained at 15 years ago is no longer a runway. Captain Bob Pearson is out of fuel, out of engines, out of options. If he can't line up with the runway at Gimli, he doesn't get a second chance. Pearson turns the yoke left and pushes the rudders to the right. The plane slips to its left.
We're sitting in the center, which is the heart of the airplane where it starts, so it's pretty solid there. I thought there's a real good chance here that we'll be all right. However, when he put the airplane into a side slip, all that went out the window because I figured, oh, if he hits a wing or something, it starts to catapult and roll, that's not going to work anymore.
The 767 loses altitude quickly, plowing sideways through the air.
When I looked to the left of the aircraft, I was looking directly at the ground. because the airplane is angled quite, about maybe 60 degrees of banks. The bank angle was quite high, and the nose of the aircraft was quite high. And it was an awkward moment, and if it was awkward for me, I can imagine for the passengers, it must really have felt odd.
I saw a sand trap from this golf course, and I thought, we're gonna crash.
Pearson must maintain a crucial balance. He's got to slow the plane enough to be able to land safely. But if he slows down too much, the airliner could lose its lift and plummet to the ground.
When a pilot is normally landing an airplane, he's maneuvering the flight controls and operating the thrust levers pretty continuously on most landings. And so I was doing the same thing without the thrust levers.
This is where I thought of my daughter Victoria being alone with my husband, and how he was going to cope with our daughter, and how she was going to cope without having a mom.
As they approach, Pearson focuses on his target, the threshold of the runway.
I got tunnel vision like I've never had it before. It was just our speed and our relationship with the threshold of the runway.
But now, only hundreds of feet from the ground, Quintel sees that their troubles are far from over. The Gimli landing strip has been converted into a drag racing strip. Today is Saturday, and it's not just a race day. It's a family day on the Gimli strip. Racing is done for the day, but the airfield is filled with members of the local sports car club, camping out with their families for the weekend. Two children have decided to pedal the length of the runway. They don't hear the plane coming for them. Without engines, it's silent. And one thing the 767 doesn't have is a horn.
Brace! Brace for landing!
The nose hit with quite a bang on the runway. Sounded like a shotgun going off at our feet.
The front landing gear gives out immediately. Pearson brakes hard. Two tires blow out. The bottom of the right engine scrapes the runway.
I was a robot. There was just no emotion at all.
Finally, Pearson sees what's in their path.
And I looked up and I could see two boys on bicycles. They must have been probably about 1,000 feet down the runway from our position when I saw them.
And then at one point, I can see he raised his head, and he's surprised. Here's this big aircraft.
I can still remember the look of terror on their faces. So they were close enough for me to see that.
With no nose gear to steer with, Pearson's only hope of driving the plane left or right is by varying the brake pressure on the two main landing gear.
That's when my heart started to pitter-patter a little bit.
The kids panic and try to outrun a plane that's traveling about 200 miles an hour.
I knew I couldn't take the airplane into these boys, and I was going to take it off into the grass on the right side. There were campers along the west side of the runway that I didn't notice until after we had touched down, and the nose was on the ground, and I can still remember out the left side, people standing by their barbecues.
Dino Calvert is at the track with his friends for a weekend of racing.
One of the gentlemen in the pits suddenly jumped in his car and he took off. And I thought, well, you don't drive like that in the pits usually. And I looked up and all I could see was smoke rising.
Pearson does all he can to stop the plane in time.
Holy crow!
The plane plows into a guardrail installed down the middle of the runway.
Smoke, Bob.
17 minutes after running out of fuel, Air Canada Flight 143 comes to a final stop on the ground.
Yeah? You okay?
Somebody yelled, Yahoo! Or something, and then people started applauding. And we were so grateful. We made it. When you believe that you're going to crash, you do believe that the airplane is going to break apart. You're going to have fire.
Evacuate! Evacuate!
Evacuate! All right, let's go. We got to get up.
Thick smoke is quickly filling the cabin. The crew doesn't take any chances. They want everyone off the plane as quickly as possible.
There was a sense of joy, and then a panic kind of, it seemed to go in waves, and then a panic saying, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here.
Less than 2 months earlier, an Air Canada DC-9 made a successful emergency landing in Cincinnati, only to burst into flames on the tarmac before all the passengers could get off. 23 people died. The crew and passengers of this flight want to avoid a similar fate.
It took maybe just a few seconds to come up to a full halt on the runway, but the cockpit was full of smoke.
Passenger evacuation checklist. Passenger checklist. Fuel shut off. Off. Cabin depressurized. Electrics off. Electrics off. Checklist complete. Time to get out of here.
Come on, guys, get some fire extinguishers. We grabbed the fire extinguishers on our way, and you never go to a fire at a racetrack without having a fire extinguisher with you. And we ran up towards it. The doors open up, and you see the chutes come out, sort of like a spider growing legs.
The plane ended up eventually standing almost what appeared to me to be almost on its nose.
When I opened my door and I saw that the chute was so steep, I thought, oh my goodness, how do I get these passengers to go down?
Due to the nose-down angle of the plane, the 2 rear slides don't reach the ground. 10 people are slightly injured during the evacuation, most of them coming down the steep rear slides.
I heard on the west radar frequency, he said, one of the 767 says, he's down okay, he's in one piece, and that's when our cheer went up. I said, okay, because all of these people were going to sleep in their own bed that night.
There's still a lot of smoke coming from the plane's nose.
Turned out it was about 6 inches of insulation between the inner and outer skins. From friction, that was starting to burn.
The flight attendants have good news. All 61 passengers have made it off the plane. There's not so much as a single serious injury.
Can we give you a hand?
Yeah, extinguisher.
Bob Pearson has done what no one has done before. He's safely landed a 767 with no engines, gliding to safety for more than 26,000 feet.
Air Canada Flight 143 glided...
The event makes international headlines immediately. People are already asking how one of the most sophisticated passenger planes in the world could have run out of fuel.
Sliding down emergency chutes.
By the next day, the investigation has already begun. Bill Taylor and Diane Rochelot of Canada's Aviation Safety Bureau are among the first investigators at the scene.
I was a junior mechanical engineering at the time. I had been working for Transport Canada for a year. Going to the field for the first time was very exciting. It was new. It was a major aircraft.
Once we got into the fuel quantity indicating system, I actually left Diane to deal with the specifics of the computer system.
First, Bill Taylor needs to confirm what everyone has been telling him, that the plane is out of fuel. Investigators drained the tanks, collecting less than 17 gallons of fuel. The 767 can hold almost 24,000 gallons. It's like having 5 tablespoons of fuel in a mid-sized car. Taylor next needs to examine the possibility that the fuel leaked out during the flight.
The other checks involve looking for any evidence of fuel having been lost. They even went so far as to go into what they call the dry bay of the aircraft. I'm a bit claustrophobic, so I really wasn't too enthused about going up in there, but I crawled up and had a look around with the flashlight and confirmed that there was no evidence of fuel having been lost in there.
That leaves Taylor with only one conclusion. Flight 143 took off without enough fuel. Now investigators need to find out why.
It's in one piece.
Diane Rochelot begins looking for the answer to that question in the plane's sophisticated electronics bay, located beneath the cabin.
The 767 was a newer type aircraft, and it did have a lot of computerized system, and I guess back in 1982, these were coming onto the market at a fast rate, and they were newer types of electronic system.
Rochelot confirms that a computerized unit, the digital fuel gauge processor, had been malfunctioning on this plane. There was no spare in Montreal, so it couldn't be replaced. Rochelot takes the component for testing.
It was decided early on that the unit, the fuel processing unit, would be taken to the manufacturer, Honeywell, in Indianapolis for testing. And I was tasked with taking the unit. So we went through all the testing procedure. And then at one point, we did discover that there was a malfunction with the unit. During the testing, we went more and more in depth, and we found out that one of the circuit, it's called an inductor coil. It was a very, very small part, and it was encapsulated at manufacture, and encapsulated means it's covered with plastic. You cannot visually see it because it's now covered with plastic, and you can't see the inductor coil itself. But once we took over the plastic case, we could see that the solder joint had not been made properly, which caused a malfunction in the system.
The faulty processor explains why Pearson didn't have fuel gauges for the flight, but doesn't explain why he didn't have enough fuel. The inoperative gauges were clearly flagged. Ground crews wouldn't have relied on them when they were fueling the plane. Investigators confirmed that the ground crew did perform a manual check of the fuel before takeoff.
We just need to know what you did next.
Yeah? We did a manual check of both tanks, and then we pump enough fuel for the trip to Edmonton.
Flight 143 should have taken off with enough fuel for the trip.
Okay, thanks. That helps.
Investigators now have to figure out how one of the world's most advanced jetliners took off with half the fuel necessary for its flight. The investigators know that with its fuel gauges out of service, Flight 143's fuel tanks were checked manually. Then the fuel for the trip to Edmonton was added to the tanks. But before the plane could be given more fuel, a crucial calculation had to be carried out. Pilots need to know the weight of the fuel on their plane. But fuel trucks pump jet fuel by volume. In order for pilots and fuelers to communicate, a simple routine translation between volume and weight has to be made.
You.
Investigators check and double-check that math. The fueling records from the day of the accident provide the answers they've been looking for.
This is a typical fueling record.
But when investigators examine the calculations for Flight 143...
And this is from Flight 143.
They look anything but straightforward. The document clearly shows the amount of fuel in the right and left tanks, but investigators are troubled by two particular numbers. One converts volume to kilograms, the other converts it to pounds.
He shouldn't have been using both. So did you convert to pounds or to kilograms?
To pound? Oh, to kilo. Can I see that again?
Further interviews with the technicians and crew reveal that the events on Flight 143
Now I don't know what I did.
were caused by human error involving poor calculations and ultimately inadequate training.
Okay, fellows, we've finished with the fuel.
The technicians refueling Flight 143 got muddled in their calculations while converting the volume coming out of the fuel truck to the weight of the fuel in the plane's tanks. No one who saw the calculations that day noticed the basic error. In 1983, Canadian ground crews were used to converting the amount of fuel leaving their trucks into pounds. The 767 was the first plane in Air Canada's fleet to have metric fuel gauges. Its fuel should have been measured not in pounds, but in kilograms, which requires a different calculation. Flight 143 needed 22,300 kilograms of fuel for the trip. But pilots and technicians let it leave with 22,300 pounds instead. Because a pound is about half a kilogram, the plane only got half the fuel it required, which explains why Pearson's flight computer told him he had plenty of fuel. He entered the wrong amount of fuel to start with. In the past, the flight engineer calculated the fuel loads. This accident raised an important question. Whose job was it with the two-man crew?
Better training is definitely an issue in an incident such as that. If everyone is trained and the lines are drawn as to who's responsible for what, then there's no ambiguity on it. People know what they're responsible for. In this case, it was sort of open-ended. We weren't aware who was responsible for the final say on this field stuff.
A subsequent inquiry found that none of those involved that day was trained in metric calculations. Not the ground technicians, not the pilots.
I had not received any, neither of us had received any training at all on doing these calculations.
The computer that had replaced the 767's flight engineer was broken, and no one knew who should be doing its job. Air Canada 143 was essentially down a man.
And the goal is to prevent a recurrence of this particular event. And also, we also find out other systems that might have been either at fault or maybe they could cause a problem in the future, and you do try to prevent recurrence.
All right.
It took a string of mechanical and human failures for Flight 143 to run out of fuel. But another failure that day may have saved some lives. If the plane's nose gear had not collapsed, it would have taken Pearson much longer to stop. The plane could have slid into the people who were at the strip that day, which would have had catastrophic results. There could have been more injuries or even loss of life. Pearson and Quintel were partly blamed for their roles in the incident. A government inquiry recommended that Air Canada re-evaluate the training of flight crews and ground technicians in metric fuel conversions. It also recommended that the airline keep more spare parts, such as fuel gauge processors. Rick Dion retired in 2003 after a long career as Air Canada's coordinator of maintenance control. First Officer Maurice Quintel was promoted to captain in 1989. Captain Bob Pearson went on to fly 10 more years for Air Canada, his experience at Gimli shaping the rest of his career as a commercial pilot.
This experience affected me mostly by making me more relaxed as a pilot, giving me the feeling that as much as I've trained for all those years, that there's always that question about how you're going to perform when the chips are down, and I now have the feeling that no matter what, as long as an aircraft stayed together, I would get it safely back on the ground. And so it's been a relaxing experience.
It's the knowledge that you know under stress you can perform. Before that, you don't know. You just hope you will, and you train for it, but you never know.
With the things that they had to deal with was magnificent. I think that got proven in the simulator in Vancouver. They tried out this same circumstances with several crews, and they all crashed.
Probably the most important thing that came out of it was the realization that when something new is introduced, special attention and training needs to be accomplished for people to be aware what they're dealing with.
When we had landed and the airplane was all in one piece, I thought, wow, I got another chance to fly again.
Because of a tragedy like that, once you take your deck of cards and fire it in the air, you're truly free. And I guess from that point of view, Gimli I find it very difficult to say, but Gimli was maybe almost the best thing that ever happened to me, next to meeting my wonderful wife and marrying her.
2 days after the landing at Gimli, Air Canada's 767 was back in the air on its way to Winnipeg for repairs. A quarter century later, that same plane is still in service, and it still carries the nickname that Bob Pearson earned it, the Gimli Glider.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain. I hope you had a good...
Captain Stephen Rasmussen has been in love with flying all of his life.
I got my first idea of flying when I was a young boy.
After learning to fly in the Air Force, Rasmussen joined Scandinavian Airlines.
He seemed to be the one who really enjoyed his job.
On December the 27th, 1991, he's in command of a state-of-the-art DC-9. The flight will take him to the very edge of his abilities, as his engines fail and his plane falls out of the sky.
I was in a nightmare.
Stockholm, Scandinavian 751, we are crashing into the ground now.
What caused the most baffling accident in Sweden's history is nothing investigators could have imagined. What they finally uncover will strain Rasmussen's lifelong relationship with airplanes to the breaking point.
I really felt that I didn't trust the aircraft.
Mayday, Mayday.
It's 2 days after Christmas. Stockholm Arlanda Airport is a mess of snow, slush, and ice. Passengers boarding a mid-morning Scandinavian Airlines flight to Copenhagen are finding the cabin very uncomfortable.
It was really warm inside the plane when we entered because there had been heaters on during night. And I saw when the passengers embarked, they also wanted to take off jackets and shoes, and because it was like a sauna.
Is it possible to turn the heat down now?
"34-year-old Ulf Sedermark has been with the airline for 4 years. He's the first officer on today's flight.
It was a light snowfall. Temperature was just below freezing and light winds. We were going to fly Stockholm to Copenhagen and then to Warsaw, back to Copenhagen and down to Barcelona that day. It would be quite a long working day.
Stefan Rasmussen has just finished an exterior check of the plane. The Danish pilot is in command this morning.
In those over 12, almost 13,000 hours I've been sitting in an aircraft, I always felt that I put the aircraft back on like a rucksack. And when we took lift on the wings, we melted together.
The plane Rasmussen is strapping on today is a nearly new DC-9, easily identifiable by its 2 rear engines.
By now, everyone should know that door stays open.
Right.
Even in the days before terrorist threats, flying with the cockpit door open is unusual. It's just one way Rasmussen has endeared himself to the crews and passengers he flies with.
I always had my cabin door open because I found out that if we had the door open and they could see that there were a human being in there, they'd trust you.
For me, it felt good that the door was open. It just feels like you have a connection more than if the door is closed.
The winter weather has delayed this flight, but Rasmussen won't compromise safety for schedule.
Where are we now with the de-icing?
The wings aren't quite done. They've done the underside. Now they're doing the top.
Thank you.
Under Captain Rasmussen's instructions, the ground crew had already de-iced the plane once. Now they're giving it another pass.
And it took a while, but they had trouble getting rid of the snow on top of the wing. So we were slightly late for our pushback out to our runway.
For Captain Per Holmberg, this kind of delay is routine business. He flies DC-9s for the airline. A passenger this morning, he is scheduled to command another flight later that day.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain. I hope you had a good Christmas. We're just getting our wings cleared as we've had a bit of snow overnight. And when that's finished, we're ready for takeoff for some warmer weather. I handpicked the airline's best cabin crew to take care of you today. We all hope you have a nice flight.
Finally, Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 is cleared to proceed. There are buildups of snow that the crew must avoid on the way to the runway.
Would have been nice of them to clear the snow.
Oh, that would have made it too easy. Approaching holding point, runway 08.
Roger, Scandinavian 751. You are cleared for takeoff from runway 08.
Spoilers?
Armed.
Auto brake, takeoff and armed. Runway update performed. Checklist completed.
Set power.
Despite the winter conditions, the takeoff is routine.
V1, rotate.
Gear up.
Gear up selected.
When Ulfi reached out for the gear, I heard things which was different.
Just 25 seconds into the flight, as the plane is climbing, there is a problem.
When you hear things that are different from the normally, you get suspicious. There was a really big roar in the aircraft, almost like an explosion. Boom!
There was another banging noise that I just thought, what is that? I had never heard that before.
It's obvious the source of the noise is the right engine.
Sounds serious. I believe it's a compressor stall.
I took the right throttle and moved a little back, but there it really became strange because the engine performance increased when I reduced the throttle. It's like if you're sitting in your car and you're turning your wheel to the left and the car is driving to the right, you get confused.
We're not supposed to call into cockpit now. And then I thought, this is an emergency. I have to call the captain.
But Captain Rasmussen doesn't respond to the call. He's too busy trying to figure out what's going wrong with his plane.
I couldn't see anything on the instrument. They were quite stable and they're quite normal range, no problem. But I could hear those roaring every second.
He searches for telltale signs of attack or structural failure.
And I looked up at the cabin pressure, because if you have a bomb or a freight door or anything which is ripped off, that'll give a decompression.
In the cabin, pressure levels are stable. But the crew has other concerns.
I saw the smoke and it smelled burnt.
What should we do about this?
Just 3,200 feet above the ground, the emergency escalates. The right engine quits.
When we have flown a little over 1 minute, the right engine just went down. I had a very, very short moment of thinking that I was in a nightmare and just dreaming. I was confused. I was really confused.
2 seconds later, the left engine also quits. The plane is now powerless.
One engine dropped, and then another engine dropped. I thought that it wasn't true. It wasn't true. It wasn't real.
Less than a minute and a half after takeoff, the DC-9 begins falling from the sky.
And after that, it was complete silence. And I think that was the worst moment for me. Just being in the air, and it's so quiet. It was like a bird just sailing through the sky. So then I started to get scared.
Engine relay.
As the pilots try to restart their engines, things get even worse. The left engine erupts in flames.
And I saw the exhaust gas temperature was rising rapidly. The max temperature was around 680 degrees Celsius, and I saw it go above 800.
A fire in the engine could spread to the rest of the plane.
Should I pull?
If Sedermark pulls the fire extinguisher in the left engine, he will never be able to restart it. He pulls the handle to put out the fire. From his seat, Captain Per Holmberg can see that the crew is in trouble. Flight 751 is now falling at a rate of 1,200 feet per minute. But air traffic controllers at the Stockholm airport have no idea the plane is in trouble.
Arlanda, Stockholm, Scandinavian 751.
Good morning, SK 751. Climb to flight level 180. We have problems with our engines, please.
We need to go back to Arlanda.
751, roger. Turn right, heading to here.
Suddenly, the radio goes dead. A result of the failed engines. Only the right engine can provide power, but it's now spinning too slowly to generate electricity for the instruments.
Without the engine, you don't have any propulsion, so the only energy you have is your height.
With time running out, the pilots of Flight 751 must find a way to restart the right engine, or else crash into the countryside below. Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 is now falling from the sky at 20 feet per second.
How can I help?
Captain Per Holmberg, who boarded the flight as a passenger, becomes part of the flight crew.
He came out in the cockpit and he said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" I don't think I even said yes. I just said, "Start the APU."
If the auxiliary power unit can be launched, it will bring back the radio and instruments.
So I just handed him the emergency checklist and started focus on controlling the flight to see that we were maintaining the speed and the attitude and that we were wings level. He managed to start the auxiliary power unit, so my flight instruments were supplied from that.
But for some reason, Captain Rasmussen's instruments don't come back online.
He managed to fly the plane basically by feel.
Power is also restored to the cabin, but it's small comfort to passengers who now know they're in extreme danger. Stockholm Air Traffic Control instructs the pilots to return to the airport.
Scandinavian 751, are you able to turn right heading 09 or 0, radar vectoring for 0-1?
But the plane is now just 1,600 feet from the ground. And First Officer Sedermark's attempts to resuscitate it aren't working.
Roger, we are maintaining our heading, but we are trying to restart our engines.
Making a 180-degree turn back to Stockholm could be catastrophic.
I really had the feeling that if I turned the aircraft at that time, we would have stalled.
When you're turning back, you are losing a lot of energy. So the most safe thing to do is actually just to go straight, keep your wings level. That means that you will use less energy of your altitude, so you can maintain your speed.
You can maintain 2,000 feet.
We are not able to maintain 2,000 feet. We are descending. We are at 1,600 feet and descending.
Holmberg wants Rasmussen to focus his attention on finding a landing spot.
Look straight ahead. Look straight ahead.
He was screaming at Stefan, just look straight ahead and watch the flight path.
Prepare for on-ground emergency.
On-ground emergency!
Bend down! Bend down! Bend down! So we shouted bend down, I don't know how many times. Bend down, bend down, bend down.
Keep your seatbelts fastened.
While passengers brace, Rasmussen considers where to land his plane.
Look straight ahead.
And I had an idea that on the northern direction could bring us out to the Baltic Sea, which was at that time frozen. And that's an excellent runway.
But instead, he finds himself gliding powerlessly over a dense forest.
I saw that green area and I saw that little light spot in the middle of the forest, but that really looked short.
Steer right, steer right.
Just 500 feet above the ground, Captain Rasmussen lifts the plane's nose to slow it down, hoping to soften the crash landing.
Pine trees from the top there look very soft. I could use the trees as almost like a pillow.
Should I lower the landing gear?
Yes, gear down.
Bend down and hold your knees.
I prepared myself for a hard impact. If it's an emergency landing, we have no engines, I just thought this is going to be a hard landing.
Stockholm, Scandinavian 751, we are crashing into the ground now.
I wasn't afraid until we were flying into the trees. Then I was scared, and I knew we were not going to make it.
I didn't thought I should die. I knew I should die. I made me pray to God. And then, a moment after, we were in a strange world.
After we have come to a complete stop, I feel the smell of airplane fuel. I thought, okay, we're gonna explode. And I look around and I see the snow because there was a big crack in the airplane fuselage just in front of the aft galley, and you could just walk down on the ground.
Everything was quiet, and I woke up. It might only have been a split second or so.
I was afraid that my spine was broken, that I wouldn't be able to walk again. So I remember I was sitting there and I was moving my toes and my feet just to see if I could have control over them. I had a pain in my hand because I had broken a bone in my hand, and I was bleeding heavily from my forehead, so I was trying to get clear of all the blood that was coming down in my eyes. And Stefan told me that we had to get out of the aircraft.
After plowing through 125 meters of pine forest, the pilot's fear is now that the broken aircraft could catch fire. Dozens of passengers escape through the breaks in the fuselage walls. But Captain Per Holmberg has been knocked unconscious by the crash.
It all went so fast that no one could take in what happened. So I tried to stay with the group of passengers I had there. But I just knew the feeling also that we had to wait a long time for the rescue teams.
Help will be here soon.
Fortunately, no fire materializes. But because they removed their winter clothing while boarding the sweltering plane, many passengers are starting to freeze.
Most people were just standing in their shirts, t-shirts, very, very little clothes. Few didn't even have shoes on.
They are now at risk from hypothermia.
So I focused on being caring. Maybe I did it for my own sake also. I needed a hug also. It was comforting to comfort someone else.
The wreckage of Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 lies just 15 kilometers northeast of Stockholm Arlanda Airport. The fuselage has broken into 3 pieces. In the chaos of the moment, nobody knows how many people have been killed in the crash. Rescuers arrive within minutes and attend to the freezing survivors. They pull Captain Per Holmberg from the cabin, unconscious.
He landed on the wall at impact, and he skidded down on the wall to the floor at impact. So he was quite badly damaged. He cut his eyelid, and he also got his collarbone that was broken off, so his shoulder was in front of him.
92 of the passengers have sustained injuries. Only 8 are considered serious. But when the crew conducts a head count, they're stunned to learn that out of the 129 people who boarded Flight 751, not a single one was killed in the crash.
Everyone survived. It was like a shock just to take in. Wow, that was a fantastic comment.
This was the happiest captain in the world. We were all alive. It was a great moment.
Reporters break the remarkable story to the world. As the Swedish Accident Investigation Board, or SAIB, takes charge of the case. Scandinavian Airlines alerts its own investigators, dispatching Tori Hultgren to head up its team.
It's most unusual that the plane crashes in a wooded area and everybody survives. I've never heard of it before. The police kept everybody off the site itself. There was a cordon around the aircraft about 100 meters. We had a complete aircraft, nothing had burned, and we had lots of good data.
Henrik Ullander from the SAIB gets to work on the evidence.
And we started to plan the documentation of the accident site, which means photographing all the final approach through the wood, you know, and to take photos of all the parts that were spread all over the place.
The 2 black boxes, which record cockpit conversations and store flight data, are recovered immediately. Investigators speak to survivors. Everyone tells a similar story.
Would you mind telling me what you saw and heard?
Loud, booming sounds from the engines moments after the flight began, smoke in the cabin, and finally the entire loss of power and an engine on fire.
You have a twin-engine aircraft, and you are really not supposed to lose both engines at the same time.
The Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines are sent to a Scandinavian Airlines repair shop for closer examination. Investigators are eager to speak with Captain Rasmussen about the incident. But to their dismay, Scandinavian Airlines takes him to the media first.
The first question, what did you think when both engines refused to function? It'll take me an awful long time to tell you all that.
The normal case is that the key witnesses, like the crew and so on, should be kept in quarantine until they meet the investigation board.
European media celebrate Captain Stefan Rasmussen as a hero for landing the DC-9 without engine power. But investigators consider the possibility that he or his co-pilot had made errors that caused the crisis in the first place.
The honor and the glory always rests with the captain, but so does also the mishaps.
I knew that being a person in the spotlight of the press would be a quite different situation. And I said to myself, the only thing you can do now is to give them all their story and then pray that they will find the reason.
Lars Lindberg is an investigative representative for the Swedish Airlines Pilot Association. He examines the wreckage for signs of mechanical or structural failure.
We knew both engines had failed for some reason, so we was concerned what was the background for something like that to happen. The first time I saw the engines in the workshop, I was surprised.
Is this all they found?
There was a number of parts that were completely missing, and this was something we hadn't seen before to this extent.
To find out what happened, investigators must find the missing pieces, which now lies somewhere in snow-covered fields and forests. A close study of Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751's engines reveals exactly which pieces are missing.
Parts of this aircraft was shedding parts from both engines. And then what you do is you go further in and you document everything and you try to find the root cause and see how it all comes together.
The missing pieces could hold the key to discovering why both of the plane's engines quit within seconds of each other. But they could be anywhere along the 15-kilometer route the aircraft covered during its short flight. They must be found. Investigators use the flight data recorder to map the plane's journey and determine where engine parts may have fallen. After scouring the snow-covered fields along the plane's path, the recovery team finds 500 fragments. Just a fraction of what's missing. Many are very badly damaged. Some of the titanium blades actually seem to have been on fire.
You had this titanium fire inside both engines, both the right and the left engine. And this titanium fire is a very unique occurrence. It's requiring very, very high pressure and very high temperature for a titanium blade to catch fire.
Investigators dig deeper into the cause of the engine trouble. The left engine's fuel line is badly dented. It was obviously hit by a fast-moving piece of metal inside the engine. The impact caused it to rupture.
This part got dislodged, it went out and hit a fuel line, and that fuel line cracked, sprayed fuel onto the hot engine.
The engine was clearly coming apart during the flight.
Sounds serious.
The discovery explains the fire in the left engine and why so many pieces of it were found so far from the crash site. But investigators are left wondering why the engines broke up in the first place. A major clue comes from passenger and crew testimonies, which told of repeated booming noises before the left engine caught fire. The cockpit voice recorder picked up these sounds.
So you can hear that, and we could correlate that with when the damage occurred. You can see that on the flight data recorder.
The sounds are familiar to investigators and leave no doubt. The DC-9's engines began surging shortly after takeoff. Jet engines rely on a steady stream of air for combustion. A series of fans move incoming air through various stages of compression. But when that flow is disrupted, fuel at the rear of the engines ignites violently and shoots forward.
That's a surge. You can have a small surge and you can have a large surge. And you can have the complete surge on the whole engine.
Sounds serious.
This surge process was very violent, so after a very short time, we had an aircraft with 2 engines that could not be restarted, that didn't generate any thrust. Basically, you had a giant glider at that point.
A closer look at the fan blades from the front of the engines explains why they were surging. They're badly dented. The damage would have prevented them from effectively directing air to the rear of the engines.
This damage that twisted the fan blade started this process. You got this disturbed air in the fan, you got this rotating fan stall that then triggered this whole breakdown, the compressor surge, and then the whole process that led up to the dual engine failures.
But what exactly mangled the blades? There are ways to tell.
If it comes from a stone, rubber, ice, and so on, you can see it on the shape of the damage. The ice causes very specific damages. It's sort of like a soft dent.
Analysis of dent patterns on the fan blades is conclusive. They were struck by ice. Now investigators want to find out where the ice could have come from.
Weather data for the 24 hours leading up to the crash.
They know Stockholm had been hit with rain and snow in the hours before Flight 751 took off.
It was a situation with the temperature around 0 degrees. It was a drizzle, snow, rain in the morning.
They learned that the DC-9 arrived from Zurich the night before, with the fuel tanks more than half full.
They had quite a large amount of reserve fuel, of diversion fuel, in their wings. The fuel in the wing tanks were close to minus 20 degrees Celsius.
The conditions that night were ideal for the formation of clear ice on the wing surface.
And here you had very, very cold fuel on the top wing skin. And as the temperature dropped during the night, it went to snow and rain, and finally snow. So there was a layer cake. Ice at the bottom, slush, and snow on top. About 10 inches total on top of the wings in the morning.
Responsibility for de-icing the plane ultimately falls on the captain. Rasmussen insists he was aware of the overnight buildup. Investigators wonder if the pilot did all he could to ensure his plane was completely free of ice. Rasmussen claims he instructed technicians to de-ice the plane thoroughly.
I didn't walk around with the aircraft. It was cold, it was frosty.
Noticing that there was still frost on the wings, the head technician ordered a second round of de-icing.
I was really convinced that the aircraft was clean. And so was he,
Where are we now with the de-icing? The wings aren't quite done. They've done the underside.
The cockpit voice recorder backs up Rasmussen's testimony.
They've got it good and clean under the wings? Yes, yes.
They de-iced the aircraft once and looked at it and I said, once more. And they de-iced as the second time.
In fact, a total of 850 liters of fluid was sprayed on the aircraft. but the fluid may have been faulty, not potent enough to melt the thick layer of ice that had accumulated on the wings overnight. Technicians test samples of the fluid used to de-ice Flight 751.
We found no discrepancies. There was nothing wrong with any of the fluids used.
But when investigators interview the maintenance crew that worked on the plane, they begin wondering if the de-icing team was thorough enough in their efforts. The ground crew insists that after they sprayed the wing, it appeared to be clean. But that appearance was deceptive.
It looked perfect, because the clear ice on top of the fuel tanks, you cannot see the clear ice.
A technician inspected the front of the wing and found no ice. He couldn't have known that there was ice further back, out of his reach.
No provisions for stairs or anything that he could use to get up on the wing at the de-icing platform. It looked shiny and nice, couldn't see any ice on it, but still there was maybe an inch of ice on top of the wing when the aircraft took off.
As soon as the plane took flight, the ice became a problem.
On this aircraft, the engines are positioned behind the wings, and as the aircraft rotated and the wings bent in order to take the weight of the aircraft, this ice in the wing roots loosened and it sucked right into the engine.
The ice damaged the fan blades at the front of the engines and ultimately caused them to begin surging.
Nobody really expected that this would happen, or could happen, but it did.
When ice breaks off the wings during flight, it doesn't pose a problem for most aircraft. But the placement of a DC-9's engines leaves them more susceptible to being struck. The Pratt & Whitney engines on Flight 751 were designed to withstand this type of ice ingestion. Something else must explain the disaster. Investigators know that the wrong reaction by a pilot can make surges worse. They comb through the flight data to see what these pilots did when the emergency struck.
The first thing you do when you have a surge, if you recognize it as a surge, is that you reduce power.
Captain Rasmussen claims he did just that.
Of course, you just pull the throttle back, and then you have the balance between the incoming fuel and incoming air. And that was actually what I did.
But the flight data recorder tells a different story.
Why is the engine power increasing?
It clearly shows that in the moments after the surge, thrust was reduced, but then seconds later was increased to beyond full power.
Yeah, it didn't add up because the RPM was increasing to 110%, and the throttle position was moving. It shouldn't be. The only thing that could move the throttles in clamp was the pilot's hand.
But if Rasmussen didn't push the throttles forward, something else did. It would explain the captain's confusion as his engines began to surge.
As a pilot, when you've gone through the training, you've done all your emergency training, you've been through the simulator, and now you have a system that is doing something that you don't expect, it's very confusing.
Despite their relentless efforts, investigators can find no possible explanation for the increase in thrust.
The frustrating part with the investigation was that we could not figure out why the system did what it did.
Then, almost 2 months after the accident, the plane's manufacturer provides the answer. The culprit is something called automatic thrust restoration.
It's brand new. It automatically increases the thrust during the climb.
Swedish authorities learned that automatic thrust restoration, or ATR, was recently introduced as a safety feature on Scandinavian Airlines planes. It existed because the FAA had discovered some pilots were throttling back considerably while taking off and landing to reduce noise over residential neighborhoods. The ATR was designed to make it impossible for them to throttle back to dangerous levels.
So as soon as he powered back, the system kicked in.
Investigators learned that when Rasmussen reduced power to clear his engine surge, the system read this as a dangerously low power setting and pushed the throttles forward. The increased thrust made the surging worse until the engines destroyed themselves. The investigation concludes that the pilots had taken the right steps to clear the surge and prevent the catastrophe. But the computer code which governs the ATR undermined their efforts.
A strip of zeros and ones caused the throttles to move and caused the engines that were stalling because they already got too much fuel, got even more fuel. And they went into self-destruct, both engines. In a few seconds, they were both totally destroyed.
The system was so new to Scandinavian Airlines that nobody there had even heard of it.
And it was confusing for everyone because we didn't know about the system, we didn't have information on the system. SAS didn't know the system existed on their aircraft.
We hadn't bought that modification. And it was sneaked in via another system.
Because he didn't know about the ATR, Rasmussen was unaware that he could only save his plane by switching it off. News that the automatic thrust restoration was responsible for the accident proved both a blessing and a curse for Captain Rasmussen. It eliminated any notion that he had made a mistake.
When I got that message, I was really released. It was like winning in the lottery. It was, because I was so happy. Because then I could explain why I was in that total cone of confusion.
But the fallout would ultimately destroy a love affair and end a career. On October the 20th, 1993, the Swedish Accident Investigation Board releases its report on the crash of Flight 751. It determines that the actions of Captain Rasmussen and First Officer Cedermark contributed to the safe outcome of this incident. And although investigators question Captain Per Holmberg's decision to enter the cockpit in the first place, they do praise his contribution.
This crew flew until they stood still on the ground. They never gave up. They never gave up. They didn't give an inch.
The investigators put much of the blame for the accident on Scandinavian Airlines because their procedures for checking for clear ice were inadequate.
I believe it's a compressor stall.
The report also condemns the fact that the pilots didn't know about the automatic thrust restoration and how it would act in a surge situation.
If the ATR system hadn't been there, if the throttles hadn't moved forward, there wouldn't have been an accident.
It was a bit strange that we didn't have all the documentation available to us, so we knew what we could expect if something like this would happen.
In the wake of the crash, Scandinavian Airlines started training its pilots how to use the ATR system. They also implemented steps to ensure airplanes don't take off with clear ice on the wings.
We changed all the procedures, we provided stairs for the mechanic, and we made it a requirement to go up on top of the wing and touch it with your hand to verify after de-icing.
After healing from his injuries, First Officer Ulf Cedermark returned to the cockpit.
I didn't feel the responsibility that I wouldn't be able to do my job again. Whatever happens, I know that I still can see things for what they are. And I still love doing my job, and if something bad happens, I can deal with it.
But Stefan Rasmussen's return proved far more difficult.
Set power.
After I'd had from a high-skilled psychologist, we talked about getting in the air again. He knew that would be a hard decision to take.
Gear up. Fire drill.
After time in the simulator, Rasmussen couldn't regain confidence in his plane.
Sorry, guys.
In a disaster situation, in a crisis, is that you have optimized the teamwork between man and machine. I really felt that I didn't trust the aircraft.
Pilots tend to take the responsibility for all that went wrong. Too much of the glory and also too much of the responsibility.
With the right counseling, about 90% of pilots involved in an accident are able to continue flying. Even though Captain Rasmussen received treatment, his career ended with the crash of Flight 751.
Taking that decision to leave aviation as pilot was like having your highest love and come to that conclusion that you have to kill her. I had many hours, many missions of happiness in an aircraft. And I loved my passengers, I loved my aircraft so much, so I said, that's it. I never regretted, never. And I think I was right.